In a fog-draped London mansion, Hercule Poirot faces a deadly game. Mr. Chaytona, a sinister collector, invites 4 detectives and 4 killers to a night of bridge where one wrong move could be fatal. A stiletto flashes, a body falls, and secrets unravel at the card table. Who among the charming doctor, the steely widow, the rugged explorer, or the nervous debutante holds the ace of murder? Can Poirot's little grey cells outwit a killer before the deck runs red? Step into the gamble where every card hides a lie. Chapter 1. The Devil's Invitation. The fog clung to London like a conspirator's cloak, muffling the clatter of horse-drawn cabs and the distant chime of Big Ben. It was a late autumn evening in 1936, and the city's pulse thrummed beneath a veil of mist, as if it, too, harboured secrets. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed in a tailored overcoat and polished patent leather shoes, stepped lightly along the Strand, his cane tapping a rhythm against the cobblestones. His moustache, a masterpiece of waxed precision, twitched as he inhaled the damp air, his mind alert despite the hour. He was bound for the Elysian Gallery, a haven of art and excess tucked behind the Savoy, where an exhibition of rare Eastern artifacts promised both culture and curiosity. Poirot's invitation to the event had arrived that morning, embossed in gold on heavy vellum, its sender a name that sparked both intrigue and unease. Mr. Chaytona. The man was a cipher, a Syrian émigré whose wealth and eccentricity had made him a fixture in London's high society, yet his true nature remained elusive. Poirot had met him once at a charity gala, where Chaytona's dark eyes and sly smile had left an impression of a man who played games with truths others dared not touch. The invitation hinted at more than Art Chaytona had scrawled, in elegant script, a spectacle to delight your little grey cells. Monsieur Poirot, the detective's curiosity, ever his master, had compelled him to accept. The Elysian Gallery glowed like a jewel in the fog, its windows spilling warm light onto the street. Poirot ascended the marble steps, handed his hat and cane to a livery attendant, and entered a world of opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms across walls adorned with tapestries, and the air carried the scent of incense and polished wood. The gallery buzzed with London's elite lords in tailcoats, ladies in shimmering gowns, and artists with wild eyes and wilder ideas. At the centre of it all stood Mr. Chaytona, resplendent in a velvet smoking jacket the colour of midnight, his olive skin gleaming under the lights. His presence was magnetic, drawing whispers and glances like moths to a flame. "Ah, Monsieur Poirot." Chaytona's voice was a silken purr as he glided toward the detective, a glass of champagne in hand. "You honour my humble exhibition. I trust the evening will prove illuminating." Poirot inclined his head, his green eyes sharp. "Monsieur Chaytona, your invitations are never without purpose. What game do you play tonight?" Chaytona's smile widened, revealing teeth that gleamed like polished ivory. "A game of observation, perhaps, or of secrets. You, of all men, appreciate the art of seeing what others overlook." Poirot's moustache twitched. "The art of seeing is only as good as the truth it uncovers." "Precisely." Chaytona clapped his hands, drawing eyes from across the room. "Come, let me show you my treasures." He led Poirot through the crowd, past jade carvings and gilded idols, to a glass case displaying a dagger with a hilt encrusted with rubies. Its blade, curved like a serpent's tongue, gleamed with a menace that seemed almost alive. "From Damascus," Chaytona murmured. "They say it has tasted blood across centuries. A collector's dream." "No." Poirot studied the weapon, his mind cataloguing its lethal elegance. "A dangerous beauty, monsieur. But beauty alone does not kill." Chaytona's laugh was low, almost a growl. "Oh, but it can inspire, can it not? Inspire acts of passion, of desperation, of murder." The word hung between them, heavy as the fog outside. Poirot's gaze flicked to Chaytona's face, searching for intent, but the man's expression was a mask of amusement. Before Poirot could probe further, a woman's voice cut through the hum of the crowd. "Mr. Chaytona, you rogue, are you monopolizing the great detective?" "Mrs. Ariadne." Oliver swept toward them. Her ample figure swayed in a peacock-blue gown that clashed gloriously with her auburn hair. The celebrated mystery novelist was a whirlwind of energy, her eyes sparkling with mischief and intellect. Poirot, who had collaborated with her on past cases, greeted her with a bow. "Madame Oliver, you are, as always, a vision of originality." She waved a hand, dismissing the compliment. Flattery, Poirot, will get you nowhere. But do tell me, what's this devil Châteauneuf up to? He's been dropping hints all evening about some grand surprise. Châteauneuf's eyes danced. Patience, dear lady. All will be revealed. For now, enjoy the art and the company. As Châteauneuf drifted away to greet other guests, Poirot and Mrs. Oliver exchanged a glance. He is a man who enjoys the stage, Poirot murmured. But what is the play, I wonder? Mrs. Oliver leaned closer, her voice dropping. I don't trust him, Poirot. He's too knowing. Like he's holding a winning hand and we're all his pawns. Before Poirot could respond, a tall man in a military-style jacket approached, his rugged features softened by a disarming smile. Monsieur Poirot, I presume. Colonel Race, at your service. His handshake was firm, his eyes those of a man accustomed to command. Châteauneuf mentioned you'd be here. Said you're the sharpest mind in London. Poirot inclined his head. Colonel Race, your reputation precedes you. A man of secrets and solutions. Race chuckled. Not tonight, I hope. I'm here for the artifacts, not intrigue. And yet, Poirot said softly, intrigue finds us all. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Superintendent Battle, a burly Scotland Yard man whose unassuming demeanour belied a razor-sharp intellect. His presence completed the quartet of crime experts Châteauneuf had evidently summoned. Battle's eyes, steady and unyielding, scanned the room as if already searching for clues. Poirot Battle greeted with a nod. Mrs. Oliver, Colonel, seems Châteauneuf's got a knack for collecting more than just trinkets. Mrs. Oliver snorted. He collects trouble, if you ask me. As the four conversed, Poirot's gaze wandered to the other guests, drawn to four figures who seemed to orbit Châteauneuf's charisma. Dr. Geoffrey Roberts, a charismatic physician with a booming laugh, held court among a cluster of admirers, his charm as polished as his cufflinks. Mrs. Lorimer, an elegant widow, with silver hair and a steely gaze, stood apart, her fingers tracing the rim of a wineglass as if solving a puzzle. Major John Despard, a weathered explorer with a scar tracing his jaw, surveyed the room like a hunter sizing up prey. And Anne Meredith, a young woman with delicate features and nervous hands, clung to the edges of the crowd, her eyes darting. As if expecting a trap, Poirot's instincts prickled. These four were no ordinary guests. Châteauneuf's earlier words about his collection echoed in his mind, each syllable laced with menace. He excused himself from his companions and approached Châteauneuf, who stood by a tapestry depicting a medieval hunt, the hound's eyes glinting with embroidered ferocity. Monsieur Châteauneuf, Poirot said, his tone light but probing, your guests are most diverse. A doctor, a widow, an explorer, a debutante. What is the thread that binds them? Châteauneuf's lips curled. You see it already, don't you? The thread is not in their titles, but in their stories. Each has a past, Monsieur Poirot. A past I find fascinating and dangerous. Poirot pressed. Châteauneuf's eyes gleamed. Danger is the spice of life, is it not? I have invited you and your esteemed colleagues to a little game, a dinner, tomorrow night, at my home in St. John's Wood. You, Colonel Race, Superintendent Battle, and Mrs. Oliver will join my four special guests, a night of bridge, perhaps, but also of observation. I wish to see if your little grey cells can discern what I have. Poirot's heart quickened, though his face remained impassive. You speak of a challenge, monsieur. But to what end? Châteauneuf leaned closer, his voice a whisper. I collect murderers, Poirot, those who have killed and walked free. My four guests, Dr. Roberts, Mrs. Lorimer, Major Despard, Miss Meredith, each has a secret I believe you'll find compelling. Will you come? The audacity of the claim struck Poirot like a physical blow, yet he maintained his composure. You play a dangerous game, Monsieur Châteauneuf. To gather such people under one roof is to tempt fate. Châteauneuf laughed, his voice echoing through the gallery. But fate is a guest I always invite. Say you'll come, Poirot. Bring your colleagues. Let us see who wins this hand. Poirot's mind raced. To refuse was to let Châteauneuf's game unfold without him, a prospect as intolerable as it was reckless. To accept was to step into a den of vipers, each poised to strike. He met Châteauneuf's gaze, his own eyes hard as jade. I accept, monsieur, but know this, Hercule Poirot does not play for amusement. If there is truth to your claims, I will find it. Châteauneuf clapped his hands, delighted, magnificent. Tomorrow, then, at 8, my home. Bring your wits, Poirot, you'll need them. As Shaitona melted back into the crowd, Poirot rejoined his companions, his expression grave. He relayed Shaitona's invitation and his chilling boast about his collection. Mrs. Oliver's eyes widened, her novelist's imagination already spinning. Murderers, under one roof. Oh, Poirot, it's like one of my plots, only dreadfully real. Battle's jaw tightened. If he's telling the truth, this is no game. We'll need to watch them, all Shaitona included. Race nodded, his military instincts flaring. Agreed, but why tip his hand? What's Shaitona's angle? Poirot's fingers brushed his moustache. He seeks to provoke, to unsettle. Perhaps he wishes to see if we can unmask his collection, or if one of them will act to protect their secret. The evening wore on, the gallery's warmth now, tinged with a chill only the 4 detectives felt. Poirot's eyes followed Shaitona's guests, noting Dr. Robert's tweezy laughter, Mrs. Lorimer's calculating glance, Despard's restless energy, and Anne's fleeting panic. Each was a piece in Shaitona's puzzle, and Poirot sensed the board was already tilting toward chaos. As the clock struck 11, Poirot took his leave, retrieving his hat and cane. The fog had thickened, swallowing the streetlights in a grey haze. He walked alone, his mind a whirl of questions. Shaitona's game was no mere parlor trick, it was a gauntlet thrown at the feet of justice. Tomorrow night, in a dining room turned battlefield, Poirot would face 4 potential killers, each cloaked in civility, each a card in a deadly deck. He reached his apartment, the silence broken only by the tick of his mantel clock. Lighting a single candle, Poirot sat at his desk, his thoughts as precise as the flame's flicker. Shaitona's invitation was a trap, but for whom? The murderers, the detectives, or Shaitona himself? Poirot's little grey cells hummed, already tracing the threads of motive and opportunity. Tomorrow, the game would begin. For now, he extinguished the candle, the darkness a mirror to the mystery awaiting him. Hercule Poirot, master of order, stepped into the unknown, ready to face the devil's invitation. Chapter 2. The table is set. The air in Mr. Shaitona's dining room shimmered with the weight of secrets, as if the crystal chandelier above the mahogany table refracted not just light but the unspoken truths of the 8 guests gathered beneath it. Hercule Poirot, his moustache impeccably waxed, sat at one end, his sharp eyes flitting from face to face, cataloguing every gesture, every flicker of unease. The room was a stage, and the players, for crime professionals and for suspected murderers, were poised for a performance none could predict. The table was a masterpiece of decadence, set with bone china and silver cutlery that gleamed like polished mirrors. Crimson roses spilled from a centerpiece, their petals brushing against the edges of wineglasses, each filled with a ruby-red Bordeaux that caught the candlelight. The aroma of roasted pheasant and truffled potatoes wafted from the plates, but Poirot's attention was not on the meal. He was watching Mr. Shaitona, the host, who presided at the table's head, with the air of a magician about to unveil his grandest trick. Shaitona was a study in theatricality. His black velvet jacket clung to his lean frame, and his dark eyes sparkled with a mischief that bordered on menace. His moustache, as meticulously groomed as Poirot's, curled upward as he raised his glass. 2 secrets, he said, his voice smooth as silk, yet carrying an edge that made the room's warmth falter. To the art of concealment, and to those who master it. The guests paused, forks hovering, glasses stilled. Dr. Geoffrey Roberts, a jovial physician with a ruddy complexion, chuckled, though the sound was brittle. A curious toast. Shaitona, are we toasting our virtues or our vices? His hazel eyes, framed by thick brows, darted toward the others, as if gauging their reactions. Mrs. Lorimer, seated to Shaitona's left, arched a silver eyebrow. Her face, sharp and elegant as a cameo, betrayed no emotion, but her fingers tightened around the stem of her glass. I suspect, Doctor, that our host finds both equally fascinating, she said, her voice cool and precise, like the tick of a metronome. Across the table, Major John Despard shifted in his seat, his broad shoulders straining against his dinner jacket. His weathered face, tanned from years under foreign suns, held a guarded intensity. Some secrets are best left buried, he said, his tone low, almost a growl. He glanced at Anne Meredith, the youngest guest, whose delicate hands trembled as she cut into her pheasant. Her auburn hair caught the light, but her green eyes remained fixed on her plate. Avoiding the other's scrutiny, Poirot's gaze lingered on Anne, noting the faint flush creeping up her neck. A nervous creature, he thought, but is it fear or guilt that quickens her pulse? Beside her, Ariadne Oliver, the celebrated mystery novelist, twirled a lock of her unruly hair, her expressive face alight with curiosity. "Oh, I do love a good secret," she said, her voice bubbling with enthusiasm. "They're the heart of any story, aren't they? Though I must say, Mr. Chatona, your dinner parties are rather more dramatic than most." Superintendent Battle, a burly man with a face like a granite cliff, grunted softly. "Drama's all well and good, Mrs. Oliver, but I prefer facts. Secrets tend to unravel under pressure." His words were measured, but his dark eyes scanned the table, as if already searching for cracks in the guests' facades. Colonel Race, the final detective, leaned back in his chair, his lean frame relaxed, but his gaze alert. "Some secrets are better left to professionals," he said, his voice carrying the clipped precision of a man accustomed to command, "though I suspect our host has a particular talent for uncovering them." Shate's smile widened, revealing a flash of white teeth. "Oh, I do, Colonel. I collect curiosities. People, you might say, are my passion, especially those who have danced with danger and slipped away unscathed." His eyes swept the table, lingering on each of the four suspects, Roberts, Despard, and Meredith, before settling on Poirot. "And who better to appreciate my collection than the great Hercule Poirot, master of the little grey cells?" Poirot inclined his head, his expression unreadable. "You flatter me, monsieur, but I am merely a student of human nature, and tonight I am most curious to observe your collection." His voice was polite, but there was a steel beneath it, a warning that he was no mere spectator. The dinner progressed, each course more lavish than the last, yet the conversation grew taut. Like a violin string stretched to breaking, Chatona steered it with the finesse of a conductor, dropping hints that prickled the air. "Take murder, for instance," he said, slicing into his dessert a delicate milk beer. "So often, it's a matter of opportunity, a moment's impulse, a clever disguise, and poof, the deed is done, and the world none the wiser." Mrs. Lorimer's lips thinned. "You speak as if it's a parlor game, Mr. Chatona. Murder is hardly so frivolous, isn't it?" Chatona countered, his eyes glinting. "Bridge, for example, is a game of strategy, yet it mirrors life. One misstep, one careless bid, and the game is lost, or won, depending on one's perspective." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "Tell me, Mrs. Lorimer, do you ever take risks at the bridge table?" Her gaze met his, unflinching. "I play to win, Mr. Chatona, always." Anne Meredith's fork clattered against her plate, drawing every eye. She flushed, murmuring an apology, but Poirot noted the way her fingers twisted her napkin, shredding its edge. Dr. Roberts laughed, a hearty sound that felt forced. "Nerves, Miss Meredith, or is our host's talk of murder unsettling you?" "Not at all," Anne said, quickly, her voice high. "It's just the wine, perhaps. It's stronger than I'm used to." Despard's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing, instead draining his own glass. Poirot watched the exchange, his mind cataloguing the interplay of fear, bravado, and deflection. Chatona, however, seemed to revel in the tension, his laughter a low, velvet purr. "My dear Miss Meredith, you mustn't let my games unsettle you. After all, we're only playing cards tonight, or are we?" The meal drew to a close, and Chatona clapped his hands, the sound sharp as a gunshot. "And now, my friends, the true entertainment begins. Bridge, the game of kings and killers. I've arranged 2 tables, one in the drawing room, one in the smoking room. Our 4 detectives will play together, and our other guests will form the second table." His smile was a blade, slicing through the room's pretense. "I shall observe, of course. I find watching far more illuminating than playing." Poirot's lips twitched, but he said nothing as the group rose, their chairs scraping against the polished floor. The detectives Poirot, Battle, Race, and Oliver exchanged glances, a silent agreement that Chatona's game was no mere diversion. They followed him into the drawing room, where a green baize table awaited, 4 chairs arranged with precision. The second table, in the smoking room, was visible through an open archway, its players already settling in. Dr. Roberts shuffled the deck with a flourish, his fingers nimble as a card-sharp's. "Let's hope for a lively game, eh?" he said, winking at Anne, who offered a tight smile. Mrs. Lorimer sat with the poise of a queen. her hands folded as if already calculating her bids. Despard, however, was restless, his eyes scanning the room as if expecting an ambush. Ariadne, Oliver, settling at the detective's table, leaned toward Poirot. "I don't like this, Poirot," she whispered, her voice low but urgent. "Shaitan's up to something. He's poking a hornet's nest, and I don't fancy getting stung." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Fear not, Madame Oliver. The hornet's nest is precisely where I thrive. Observe, and we shall see who stings whom." Superintendent Battle dealt the first hand, his movements deliberate, his face a mask of concentration. "Let's keep our eyes open," he muttered to Race, who nodded. The cards slapped against the table, each one a small explosion in the quiet room. In the smoking room, the other table was quieter, the players' voices muted but their postures tense. Shaitona lounged by the fireplace, a glass of brandy in hand, his silhouette framed by the flickering flames. As the first trick was played, Poirot's attention sharpened. He noted the way Mrs. Lorimer's eyes flicked to her partner, Despard, her expression unreadable but her fingers precise as she laid down a card. Anne Meredith hesitated, her card hovering before she played it, earning a sharp glance from Roberts. The doctor's smile was too wide, too practiced. As he trumped the trick, in the detective's game, Ariadne Oliver was less restrained, her laughter bubbling up as she misbid spectacularly. "Oh, bother, I've done it again," she exclaimed, tossing down a card. "I'm much better at writing mysteries than solving them at the card table." Battle's lips twitched, but his eyes were on the smoking room. "Something's off," he murmured to Poirot. "They're playing like their lives depend on it." "Perhaps they do," Poirot replied softly, his gaze fixed on The host's eyes were half-lidded, but Poirot sensed the intensity beneath, like a predator watching prey. The air grew heavier, the crackle of the fire the only sound beyond the soft rustle of cards. As the first rubber ended, Shaitona rose, stretching languidly. "A fine start, my friends. But the night is young, and the game has only begun." He moved to the smoking room, his shadow trailing like a cloak. Poirot followed his movement, noting the way the four players stiffened as Shaitona approached. Their cards momentarily forgotten, Mrs. Lorimer spoke first, her voice cutting through the silence. "Enjoying the spectacle, Mr. Shaitona, or do you have another surprise in store?" Chapter 3. A stiletto's whisper. The air in Mr. Shaitana's opulent drawing-room hung heavy, as though the very walls held their breath. The flickering glow of the chandelier cast long shadows across the polished mahogany bridge tables, where the players sat, their faces a gallery of guarded expressions. Hercule Poirot, his small frame poised with the alertness of a cat, sipped his tisane, his sharp eyes darting between the four suspects in the second room. The clink of crystal and the soft shuffle of cards punctuated the silence, but beneath, the civility of the game, a current of unease rippled. Mr. Shaitana, the host of this peculiar evening, lounged by the fireplace in the main room, his dark eyes glittering with an almost predatory amusement. His dinner party had been a spectacle: sumptuous dishes, rare wines, and conversation laced with barbs so subtle they might have been mistaken for wit. But Poirot, ever attuned to the undercurrents of human nature, had sensed the danger in Shaitana's cryptic taunts about undetected crimes. The man's obsession with collecting murderers as one might collect rare coins was not merely eccentric, it was a spark in a room dusted with gunpowder. In the second room, the bridge game unfolded with a rhythm that belied its tension. Dr. Roberts, a physician with a too charming smile, played with a flourish, his bids bold, and his laughter just a shade too loud. Across from him, Mrs. Lorimer, her silver hair immaculate and her posture rigid, handled her cards with the precision of a surgeon. Major Despard, rugged and tanned from years in distant jungles, betrayed a flicker of impatience in his quick glances toward the main room, and young Anne Meredith, her delicate features pale under the lamplight, fumbled her cards with nervous fingers, her eyes darting to her partner as if seeking rescue. Poirot, seated with Superintendent Battle, Colonel Race, and Ariadne Oliver in the main room, observed the second table through the open archway. The four detectives had been invited to play bridge, but Poirot suspected their true role was to be spectators in Shaitona's twisted game. The host had divided his guests with deliberate care, for crime professionals in one room, for suspected killers in the other. The bridge tables were not merely a pastime, they were a stage, and Poirot felt the curtain rising on a drama he could not yet name. "An interesting hand, don't you think, Monsieur Poirot?" Shaitona's voice, smooth as velvet, cut through Poirot's thoughts. The host leaned forward, his long fingers cradling a glass of ruby-red wine. Bridge is such a revealing game. One's character is laid bare in every bid, every discard. Poirot tilted his head, his mustache twitching slightly. Indeed, Monsieur the cards, they speak as loudly as the player's eyes. Shaitona chuckled, a sound that sent a shiver down Ariadne Oliver's spine. The mystery novelist, her wild curls barely tamed by a velvet headband, shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "I don't like this," she muttered to Superintendent Battle, her voice low. "He's playing with fire, inviting people he thinks are murderers. What if one of them takes offense?" Battle, a broad-shouldered man with a face like carved granite, gave a slight nod. "He's baiting them. And us. But Poirot's got his eye on things. Don't you, Poirot?" "Always. Mon ami," Poirot replied, his tone light, but his gaze unwavering. He adjusted his tie, a gesture that seemed more about grounding himself than vanity. "The little grey cells, they are never idle." Colonel Race, his lean frame relaxed, but his eyes sharp, leaned back in his chair. "Shaitona's got a flair for the dramatic, I'll give him that. But if he's right about these four, we're sitting in a viper's nest." The conversation paused as a servant glided into the room, refilling glasses with a practiced hand. Poirot's attention drifted back to the second room, where the bridge game continued. Dr. Roberts had just trumped Mrs. Lorimer's ace, his grin wide but his eyes cold. Anne Meredith dropped a card, her apology barely audible, while Major Despard's jaw tightened. His focus split between the game and the host's silhouette by the fire. The room felt warmer now, the fire crackling with an almost mocking cheer. Poirot's fingers tapped lightly on the arm of his chair, his mind cataloguing every detail. The way Mrs. Lorimer's lips pursed when she lost a trick, the faint tremor in Anne's hand as she reached for her glass, the calculated ease in Dr. Roberts' posture. Major Despard's restless energy was the most telling a man accustomed to action, not this stifling parlor game. Suddenly, a gust of wind rattled the tall windows, and the chandelier's light flickered, casting the room into a momentary dance of shadows. Anne Meredith gasped, her cards scattering across the table. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she stammered, her voice high and brittle. "The wind had startled me." Mrs. Lorimer's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing, gathering the cards with a swift, precise motion. Dr. Roberts laughed, a touch too heartily. "No harm done, Miss Meredith. Just a bit of London weather, reminding us it's alive." Major Despard's gaze flicked to the windows, then back to the table. "Let's keep the game moving," he said, his voice clipped. "We're falling behind." Poirot's attention sharpened. The wind had been a distraction, yes, but it had also revealed something, a crack in the facade of each player. Anne's nervousness was not merely shyness, it was fear. Dr. Roberts' laughter was a mask, too polished to be genuine. Mrs. Lorimer's silence was a fortress, and Despard's impatience hinted at a man who loathed being caged. Shaitona rose from his chair by the fire, stretching languidly. "How delightful to see such concentration," he purred, strolling toward the archway separating the rooms. "Tell me, Major Despard, is bridge as thrilling as stalking a lion in the bush?" Despard's eyes flashed, but his tone remained even. "Different kind of hunt, Mr. Shaitona, less blood." Usually, Shaitona's laughter echoed, sharp and unsettling. "Oh, I wouldn't be so sure. Blood can be spilled in many ways, can't it?" Dr. Roberts raised an eyebrow, his smile unwavering. "You're full of riddles tonight, Shaitona. Care to share what's behind them?" "All in good time," Shaitona replied, his voice dripping with insinuation. He turned to Poirot, his dark eyes glinting. "And you, Monsieur Poirot, are you enjoying my little experiment?" Poirot's smile was polite but guarded. "Your experiment, monsieur, is most illuminating. But I wonder if all your guests appreciate being specimens under the glass." Shaitona's grin widened, but before he could reply, a low groan came from the second room. All eyes turned as Anne Meredith clutched her chest, her face pale. "I feel faint," she whispered, swaying in her chair. Dr. Roberts was at her side in an instant, his physician's instincts kicking in. "Breathe, Miss Meredith. Deep breaths, perhaps some air." He glanced at Shaitona, who waved a hand toward the windows. "Open one." "By all means," Shaitona said, his tone almost bored, "though I'd hate to disrupt the game." Major strode to the window, throwing it open with a force that made the curtains billow. Cool night air flooded the room, carrying the faint scent of rain and city smoke. Anne's breathing steadied, but her eyes remained wide, fixed on Shaitona, as if he were a spectre. Poirot watched the scene unfold, his mind racing. Anne's faintness could be genuine or a calculated distraction. Dr. Robert's quick response was professional, but was it too quick? And Shaitona's indifference, was it the arrogance of a man who believed himself untouchable, or something more sinister? The game resumed, but the atmosphere had shifted. The players' movements were stiffer, their banter forced. Poirot's gaze lingered on Shaitona, who had returned to his seat by the fire, his long fingers tracing the edge of a small, ornate dagger displayed on a nearby table. The blade, one of Shaitona's many curios, gleamed in the firelight, its handle inlaid with mother-of-pearl. Poirot's stomach tightened. A collector of murderers might well collect the tools of their trade. Time passed, marked only by the soft ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner. The bridge game in the second room reached a crescendo, with Mrs. Lorimer declaring a grand slam, her voice cool but triumphant. Dr. Roberts clapped, though his eyes flicked to Shaitona, who remained silent, his gaze fixed on the fire. Then, without warning, a chill swept through the room, not from the open window, but from something far more primal. Poirot's instinct screamed, and he rose, his small frame taut with alertness. "Monsieur Shaitona," he called, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the players. There was no response. Poirot crossed the room in swift, deliberate steps, the other detectives trailing behind. Shaitona sat motionless, his head tilted back, his eyes open but unseeing. The firelight danced across his face, revealing a thin trickle of blood seeping from his chest. The ornate dagger, no longer on the table, was buried to its hilt in his heart. Ariadne Oliver stifled a gasp, her hand flying to her mouth. Superintendent Battle's face hardened, his eyes scanning the room. Colonel Race moved to the archway, his gaze locking on the four players in the second room, who had frozen mid-game. "Stay where you are," Battle barked, his voice like a whip. "Nobody moves." Dr. Roberts stood, his face a mask of shock. "Good God, is he dead?" Poirot said softly, his fingers hovering near the dagger, but not touching it. "Murdered, in the midst of his own game." Mrs. Lorimer's lips parted, but no sound came. Anne Meredith's hands trembled, her cards slipping to the floor. Major Despard's jaw clenched, his eyes darting to the open window, then back to the body. "Who was in this room?" Battle demanded, his bulk filling the space as he stepped forward. "Nobody," Dr. Roberts said quickly. "We were all playing bridge in there." He gestured to the second room, his voice steady but his eyes betraying a flicker of unease. "Yet the dagger was here," Poirot murmured, his gaze sweeping the room, "and the killer was close enough to strike." Ariadne Oliver, recovering, her nerve leaned closer to Poirot. "They were all in there playing," she whispered. "How could one of them have done it without the others noticing?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "That, Madame Oliver, is the question. The bridge game. It is not only a game tonight, it is a screen, a mask, and we shall unmask the one who used it." Superintendent Battle took charge, directing the servants to seal the exits and summoning the police. Colonel Race stood guard at the archway, his presence a silent warning to the four suspects, who now sat in uneasy silence, their cards abandoned. Mrs. Lorimer's hands were folded neatly in her lap, but her knuckles were white. Anne Meredith's breath came in short, shallow gasps. Dr. Roberts attempted a smile, but it faltered. Major Despard's gaze was fixed on the floor, his fingers drumming a restless rhythm. Poirot knelt beside Shaitona's body, his eyes tracing the angle of the dagger, the position of the chair, the distance to the bridge table. The killer had been bold striking in a room full of people, under the noses of four detectives. It was a crime of audacity, of precision, of nerve, and Poirot knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that the answer lay not in the physical evidence, but in the minds of the players. "Messieurs, Madame," he said, rising to face the suspects, "a man is dead, and one among you is his killer. The game of bridge is over, but the game of truth has just begun." The room seemed to hold its breath, the fires crackled the only sound. Poirot's gaze moved from face to face, reading the fear, the defiance, the secrets etched in their eyes. The stiletto's whisper had silenced Shaitona, but it had awakened something else, a challenge that Hercule Poirot would not rest until he had met. Chapter 4. The Bridge of Motives. The air in Mr. Shaitona's opulent drawing room, hung heavy with the scent of cigar smoke and suspicion, the remnants of a dinner now overshadowed by death. Hercule Poirot stood near the fireplace, its dying embers casting flickering shadows across his polished shoes. The stiletto, still embedded in Shaitona's chest, gleamed under the chandelier's light, a silent accusation pointed at the 4 bridge players who had sat mere feet away. Superintendent Battle, his broad frame blocking the doorway, surveyed the scene with the grim efficiency of a man accustomed to chaos. Colonel Race, leaning against a mahogany bookcase, crossed his arms, his sharp eyes darting between the suspects. Ariadne Oliver, the mystery novelist, paced near the velvet drapes, muttering about plot twists and the audacity of real-life villains. The 4 suspects, Dr. Roberts, Mrs. Lorimer, Major Despard, and Anne Meredith, sat in a tense semicircle, their faces a gallery of feigned innocence and guarded unease. Poirot's mustache twitched as he clasped his hands behind his back, his mind already sifting through the evening's events like a jeweler examining flawed gems. "Messieurs et Madame," he began, his voice soft yet commanding, "we are faced with a crime most audacious. A man is dead, and the murderer is among us, hidden in plain sight, as if playing a hand of bridge with the devil himself." Dr. Roberts, a portly physician with a too-easy smile, adjusted his cufflinks. "This is preposterous," he said, his voice smooth as polished brass. "We were all playing bridge, engrossed in the game. Surely you don't think one of us could have slipped away to do that?" He gestured vaguely toward Shaitona's body, now covered with a silk throw by Battle's orders. Mrs. Lorimer, her silver hair immaculate despite the hour, raised an eyebrow. "Dr. Roberts, your indignation is noted, but let us not waste Monsieur Poirot's time with theatrics." Her voice was crisp, each word clipped as if cut from crystal. She sat ramrod straight, her hands folded in her lap. The picture of composure Poirot noticed the slight tremor in her fingers, betraying a storm beneath her calm. Major Despard, rugged and tanned from years under foreign suns, leaned forward, his jaw tight. "I don't like being accused without evidence," he said, his voice low, like the rumble of distant thunder. Shaitona was a provocateur. He invited trouble, flaunting his so-called collection of murderers. Perhaps he misjudged his game. Anne Meredith, the youngest, clutched her handbag, her delicate features pale against her auburn curls. "I didn't even know him well," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "Why would I?" She trailed off, her eyes darting to the floor, as if the Persian rug might offer absolution. Ariadne Oliver stopped pacing, her scarf fluttering like a battle flag. "Oh, come now, you were all in the room with him, playing your cards, while he sat there, practically daring someone to kill him. It's like something out of one of my novels, only better." She caught Poirot's reproachful glance and coughed. "Sorry, Hercule, I'll behave." Superintendent Battle cleared his throat, his notebook open in his calloused hands. "Let's stick to facts. Shaitona was alive when the bridge games began. He was dead by the time the second rubber ended. That gives us a window of opportunity. Nobody left the room, according to the servants, and the windows were locked. So, one of you 4, he pointed at the suspects, did this." Poirot nodded, stepping toward the bridge tables, where the cards still lay scattered, frozen in the moment of discovery. "The game of bridge," he mused, "is a microcosm of life. Nest, CEP, strategy, deception, partnership, and risk. Each of you played your hands, but one of you played a darker game." He picked up a score sheet, its neat columns filled with numbers and symbols. "These scores, they are not merely numbers. They are a map of your minds, your temperaments, your secrets." Dr. Roberts chuckled, though it sounded forced. "Really, Poirot, you're making too much of a simple game." I bid boldly. "Yes, but that's hardly a confession of murder." "Boldness," Poirot replied, his green eyes glinting, "can be a mask for recklessness or calculation. Let us examine the evening's play, shall we?" He gestured to the 2 bridge tables. The first, in the main drawing room, had hosted Dr. Roberts and Mrs. Lorimer against Major Despard and Anne Meredith. The second, in the smaller anteroom where Shaitona died, had been a dummy table, with one player the dummy free to move during each hand. Battle flipped through his notebook. "The servants confirm nobody entered or left the anteroom during the game. The 4 of you were in there, playing, with Shaitona sitting by the fire. He was alive at 9:30 p.m. when the butler brought him a drink. He was dead by 11 p.m. when Miss Meredith screamed." Anne flinched at her name, her fingers tightening on her bag. I only screamed because I saw him slumped over, with that knife in him. Oui, Mademoiselle Poirot said, his tone gentle but probing. And yet, you were the dummy during that hand, were you not? Free to move about the room, while your partner played. Her eyes widened. I didn't go near him. I was adjusting my shawl by the window. Mrs. Lorimer's lips twitched, almost a smile. The window was locked. Miss Meredith, I noticed you fumbling with your shawl, but you were closer to Mr. Shaitonah than you claim. That's unfair. Anne's voice cracked, her fragility giving way to defiance. You're trying to pin this on me because I'm the youngest, the easiest target. Major Despard's hand twitched, as if resisting the urge to comfort her. Let's not jump to conclusions, he said, his gaze flicking to Mrs. Lorimer. We were all in that room, all distracted by the game. Any one of us could have moved unnoticed. Poirot tilted his head, studying Major, you are a man of action, accustomed to danger. Did you not find Shaitonah's taunts about undetected crimes provocative? Perhaps they stirred a memory, a fear of exposure. Despard's jaw tightened. I've nothing to hide. Shaitonah was a fool, playing with fire. I didn't like him, but I didn't kill him. Colonel Race, silent until now, spoke up, his voice calm but authoritative. Poirot, let's focus on the mechanics. The stiletto came from Shaitonah's display case, just behind his chair. The killer needed only a moment to grab it, strike, and return to the table. A bold move, but not impossible in the dim light, and distraction of the game. Precisely, Poirot agreed. And the bridge scores, they tell us more than you think. He held up the score sheet, its grid of numbers a cipher only he seemed to understand. Dr. Roberts, you bid 3 spades when a safer 2 would have sufficed. Mrs. Lorimer, your play was flawless, yet you hesitated twice, as if distracted. Major Despard, your aggressive trump calls suggest confidence or defiance. And Miss Meredith, your errors were those of inexperience, yet you corrected them swiftly, as if hiding a sharper mind. Ariadne Oliver clapped her hands, startling. And oh, it's brilliant. The cards are like a psychological fingerprint. Hercule, you're wasted. As a detective you should write thrillers. Poirot's mustache curved upward, but his eyes remained serious. Madame, the truth is more thrilling than fiction. Let us question each suspect about their movements during the game. Superintendent, if you please. Battle nodded, stepping toward Dr. Roberts. Doctor, you were the dummy during the third hand of the second rubber. Where were you? Roberts leaned back, crossing his legs. I was stretching my legs. Battle sat by the fire for a moment, admired Shaitonah's collection of daggers. Never touched them, of course. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The fire, you say? Close to Monsieur Shaitonah, then? Did you speak to him? Not a word, Roberts said quickly. He was dozing, or so I thought. Mrs. Lorimer spoke up, her voice cool. I recall you standing by the display case. Dr. Whodunit seemed quite interested in the stiletto's handle. Mother, wasn't it? Robert's smile faltered. You have a sharp memory, Mrs. Lorimer. I was merely admiring the craftsmanship. Poirot turned to Mrs. Lorimer. And you, madame, as the dummy in the next hand, where did you go? I remained at the table, she said firmly. I was reviewing the score, ensuring no errors. I had no need to wander. Anne's voice trembled as she spoke unprompted. I saw her. She was writing something, not just looking at the score. I thought it was odd. Mrs. Lorimer's eyes flashed. Miss Meredith, your imagination is as vivid as your bidding is erratic. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the brewing argument. And you, Major Despard, your movements. Despard shrugged. I stepped to the sideboard for a drink during my dummy turn. Whiskey, neat. Shaitonah was alive, then I saw him shift in his chair. Poirot paced slowly, his polished shoes clicking on the parquet floor. So, each of you had a moment, a fleeting opportunity. The stiletto was within reach, the room dimly lit, the game a distraction. But motiva, that is the heart of it. Shaitonah, he spoke of crimes unpunished. He knew something, or thought he did, about each of you. The suspects shifted uncomfortably, their silence louder than words. Battle scribbled in his notebook, while Race exchanged a glance with Poirot, a silent acknowledgement of the game's complexity. Ariadne Oliver, unable to resist, leaned forward. It's like a locked true mystery, only better. For suspects, for detectives, and a dead host who practically begged to be murdered. Hercule, what's your next move? Poirot smiled faintly, holding up the score sheet once more. My next move, Madame Oliver, is to study these numbers. They are not random. They are a window into the soul of the killer. Each bid, each play, each hesitation it reveals character, intent, perhaps even guilt. I shall retire to my apartment and consult my little grey cells. Battle closed his notebook with a snap. Right. We'll secure the scene and question the servants further. Nobody leaves London until we've got answers. As the suspects rose, their movements stiff with tension, Poirot's gaze lingered on the bridge table. The cards lay scattered, a king of spades staring up at him like an accusing eye. He tucked the score sheet into his pocket, its weight a promise of revelations to come. The game, he knew, was far from over. The detectives escorted the suspects out, their footsteps echoing. In the grand hall, Poirot paused by the fireplace, his fingers brushing the edge of the display case where the stiletto had rested. A game of bridge, he murmured, but the stakes are life and death. Outside, the London fog curled around the street lamps, cloaking the city in secrets. Poirot stepped into the night, his mind already reconstructing the bridge hands, each trick a step closer to the truth. The score sheet in his pocket seemed to pulse with possibility, a cipher of motives waiting to be decoded. The investigation deepened the next morning in a discreet Scotland Yard office, its walls lined with maps and case files. Superintendent Battle sat at a heavy oak desk, his tie slightly askew from a sleepless night. Colonel Race stood by the window, watching the grey drizzle paint the city in mournful hues. Ariadne Oliver perched on a chair, her notebook open, scribbling ideas for a novel she swore she wouldn't write. Poirot, impeccable in a pinstriped suit, stood before a chalkboard, the bridge score sheet pinned to its surface like a battle plan. The scores, Poirot began, tapping the chalkboard, are not merely numbers, they are a narrative. Each bid reflects ambition or caution, each play reveals nerve or fear. Let us reconstruct the game. Battle leaned forward, his elbows on the desk. You really think the way they played bridge will tell us who killed Shaitana Maiswi? Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. In bridge, one cannot hide one's nature. The reckless bid, the cautious pass, the bold trump, they are fingerprints of the mind. Race crossed his arms, skeptical but intrigued. All right, Poirot. Walk us through it. Poirot pointed to the first column of numbers. Here, Dr. Roberts bids 3 spades, a risky move when 2 would have secured the contract. It suggests a man who thrives on danger, who enjoys the thrill of a gamble. But look, he tapped a later entry. He overtricks, winning more than necessary. This is not mere luck. It is calculation, disguised as bravado. Ariadne Oliver's pen paused. So, you think Roberts is the killer because he's bold? Not yet, Madame Poirot said, but his play suggests a man capable of seizing an opportunity, even in a crowded room. He moved to the next column. Mrs. Lorimer. Her bids are precise, almost mathematical. She plays to win, but without flourish. Yet twice she hesitates here and here before passing. Why? Was her mind elsewhere, perhaps on a stiletto by the fire? Battle grunted. She's a cool one. That Mrs. Lorimer didn't bat an eye when we questioned her. Indeed, Poirot said. Her composure is a shield, but even shields have cracks. He pointed to Major Despard's scores. The Major, he plays with aggression, trumping early and often. He is a man of action, unafraid to dominate the table. But his aggression is controlled, not reckless. If he killed, it would be swift, decisive, but would he risk it in a room full of witnesses? Race nodded. Despard's a soldier. He'd plan his moves, not act on impulse. Finally, Poirot tapped Anne Meredith's scores. Mademoiselle Meredith. Her play is erratic, full of small mistakes. She corrects them quickly. She appears nervous, inexperienced, but there is a cunning beneath. Her errors are too convenient, as if designed to make her seem harmless. Ariadne Oliver gasped. You mean she's playing the innocent on purpose? Oh, that's devious. I'm stealing that for my next book. Poirot ignored her, his fingers tracing the numbers. The killer, Mies Amis, is one who saw an opportunity in the chaos of the game. The dummy player, free to move, could approach Shaitona unnoticed. The stiletto was within reach, the light low, the others absorbed in their cards. But motiva, that is what we must uncover. Battle flipped through his notes. We've got alibis, but they're shaky. Roberts was near the fire. Lorimer was at the table, Despard was at the sideboard, and Meredith was by the window. Nobody saw anything, or so they claim. Race frowned. Shaitana's taunts about unpunished crimes hit a nerve. He knew something about each of them, or thought he did. That's the key. Poirot nodded, his eyes distant. We, Colonel. Shaitana was a collector of secrets, and secrets are dangerous. We must dig deeper into their pasts. But for now, the bridge scores are our guide. They revealed not only who could have killed, but who would have killed. Ariadne Oliver leaned forward, her eyes wide. Hercule, you're building a case out of card games. It's brilliant, but it's mad. What's next? Poirot smiled, folding the score sheet carefully. Next, we observe, we question, we provoke. The killer is clever, but they cannot hide from Hercule Poirot. The bridge of motives is laid, and I shall cross it to find the truth. The room fell silent, the only sound the patter of rain against the window. The score sheet, now tucked back into Poirot's pocket, seemed to hold the weight of the case itself, a map of deception, waiting to be deciphered. As the detectives dispersed to pursue their leads, Poirot's mind churned, the patterns of the bridge game swirling like a storm. The truth, he knew, was hidden in those numbers, in the fleeting glances and calculated bids of a deadly night. Chapter 5. Shadows of the Past. The air in Superintendent Battle's office hung heavy with the scent of old leather and cigarette smoke, a fitting backdrop for the grim task at hand. The four detectives, Hercule Poirot, Superintendent Battle, Colonel Race, and Ariadne Oliver, sat around a sturdy oak table, its surface scarred from years of case files and coffee stains. Papers were strewn before them, witness statements, a floor plan of Shaitana's opulent drawing room, and a list of the four suspects, each name a potential key to unlocking the mystery of his murder. The stiletto, now safely in police custody, seemed to pulse with the weight of its deed, though it offered no clues beyond its cold, polished steel. Outside, London's evening fog pressed against the windows, muffling the city's heartbeat and casting eerie shadows across the room. Poirot, his small frame impeccable in a tailored suit, leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. His eyes, sharp as a falcon's, darted between his colleagues, each of whom bore the strain of the investigation in their own way. Battle's broad shoulders were hunched, his jaw set as he scribbled notes. Colonel Race, his weathered face betraying years of service in distant corners of the empire, stared into the middle distance, as if piecing together a puzzle only he could see. Ariadne Oliver, her wild curls barely contained by a haphazard bun, chewed on the end of a pencil, her novelist's mind spinning theories as fast as she could discard them. Mies, Amos, Poirot began, his voice soft yet commanding. We stand at the crossroads of human nature and deception. Shaitana, he was a collector not only of art but of secrets, nests deep, and these secrets, they are buried in the pasts of our four players, Dr. Roberts, Mrs. Lorimer, Major Despard, and Mademoiselle Anne Meredith. To find the murderer, we must dig, like archaeologists, into the shadows of their lives. Battle grunted, flipping open a folder. Right, let's start with what we've got. I've had my men pull records, interview contacts, and chase down rumors. It's not much, but it's a start. Dr. Roberts, first general practitioner, Harley Street. Well-liked, charming, bit of a ladies' man by all accounts. But there's a whisper about a patient who died under his care 3 years ago. A Mrs. Craddock, wealthy widow. Official report says heart failure, but the family raised a stink, claimed it was suspicious. No evidence, so it was dropped. Poirot's mustache twitched. Heart failure, you say? A convenient diagnosis, Nan. And what of the bridge game? Dr. Roberts, he played with a boldness, a recklessness. I observed his bids too daring, too confident. A man who takes risks, perhaps in life as in cards. Colonel Race leaned forward, his voice low and measured. Reckless men make mistakes, Poirot, but they also cover their tracks well. I've seen his type in Cairo, in Bombay, smooth talkers who charm their way out of trouble. What about Mrs. Lorimer? Battle turned a page. Widow, late 50s, lives alone in a Mayfair flat. Husband died a decade ago. Stroke. Nothing unusual, though the timing raised a few eyebrows. He was much older, left her a fortune. She's a bridge fiend, plays at the highest levels. No criminal record, but there's talk of her being cold, calculating. One source called her a woman who'd do anything to win. Ariadne Oliver tossed her pencil onto the table with a dramatic flourish. Cold, calculating. Oh, that's delicious. She's like one of my characters, a queen of ice, hiding a dagger behind her smile. But what's her motive? Shaitana's hints at dinner, those sly little jabs about undetected crimes, they hit her hard. I saw her flinch when he mentioned accidents that weren't accidents. Poirot nodded, his eyes gleaming. Oui, Madame Oliver, you have the nose for the drama. Mrs. Lorimer, she is formidable, a mind like a steel trap. But it is Mademoiselle Anne Meredith who intrigues me. So young, so delicate, yet her eyes, they dart like a frightened deer. What do we know of her? Superintendent. Battle frowned, flipping to another page. Anne Meredith, 25, governess turned companion, quiet, no family to speak of. Lived with a Mrs. Benson, an elderly widow in Devon, until 2 years ago. Mrs. Benson died digitalis poisoning, ruled an accident, and inherited a small sum, enough to move to London. She'd been living with a friend, Rhoda Dawes, ever since. No priors, but she's nervous, jumpy. My men say she nearly fainted when we mentioned Shaitana's name. Digitalis, Poirot murmured, his fingers tapping the table. A poison derived from foxgloves, so subtle, so easily mistaken for a heart condition. And Mademoiselle Meredith, she was at the bridge table, her hands trembling as she played. I wonder, was it fear of discovery, or guilt? Race's eyes narrowed. And then there's Major Trade, my old stomping grounds, Africa, South America. He's a soldier, an explorer, bit of a rogue. There's a story about a safari in Rhodesia, 5 years back. A botanist, Professor Langley, died on his watch shot, supposedly by accident. Despard was cleared, but the locals swore he'd argued with Langley over money. He's got a temper, that one, and a past full of shadows. Ariadne Oliver leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. A temper, a jungle, a dead botanist. Oh, it's too perfect. He's like something out of one of my Sven Hiersen novels, rugged, dangerous, with a secret he'd kill to keep. But why Shaitana? What did that devil know? Poirot raised a hand, silencing the room. That, Mies Amos, is the question. Shaitana, he was no fool. He collected these four, not for their bridge skills, but for what he believed they had done, crimes unpunished, sins buried. We must uncover these truths, for in them lies the motive for his murder. The next morning, Poirot stood before a Georgian townhouse in Mayfair, its facade as pristine as Mrs. Lorimer's reputation. The autumn chill nipped at his gloved hands as he rang the bell, his mind already dissecting the woman he was about to confront. The door opened to reveal a maid, her expression guarded. Monsieur Poirot, to see Mrs. Lorimer, he said, his voice smooth as silk. The maid led him to a drawing-room where Mrs. Lorimer sat, a queen in her domain. Her silver hair was swept into an elegant chignon, her navy dress severe yet stylish. The room was a study in restrained polished mahogany, a single vase of white roses, and a bridge table in the corner, its green felt gleaming under the chandelier. Monsieur Poirot, she said, rising with the grace of a dancer, I expected you'd come. Tea. Nan, Merci, Poirot replied, settling into a chair. I come not for tea, but for truth. Mr. Shaitana, he spoke of crimes undetected, of sins that linger, and I saw, Madame, the shadow that crossed your face when he spoke. What did he know of you? Mrs. Lorimer's lips tightened, but her eyes remained steady. Shaitana was a cruel man. Monsieur Poirot, he enjoyed toying with people, dangling their secrets like bait. But I have no secrets worth killing for. Poirot tilted his head, studying her. Your husband, madame, his death a stroke. They say yet, Shaitana hinted at irregularities. Tell me, what was your marriage? Was it a happy one? Her fingers, resting on the arm of her chair, twitched a fleeting crack in her composure. My husband was a difficult man. Controlling, demanding his death was a relief, I won't deny it. But murder? No, I am no poisoner, no schemer. I play bridge, Monsieur Poirot, and I play to win. That is my crime, if you must call it that. And yet, Poirot pressed, Shaitana believed otherwise. He saw something in you, a darkness perhaps, or was he mistaken? Mrs. Lorimer's gaze hardened. If you seek darkness, look to Anne Meredith. I saw her that night, lingering near Shaitana's chair when she thought no one was watching. Her hands were shaking, her face pale. Ask her what she was doing. Poirot's moustache quivered with interest. Merci, madame. You have given me much to consider. As he left, the fog seemed to cling to him, as if reluctant to let him go. Mrs. Lorimer's words echoed in his mind, and Meredith, near Shaitana's chair. Was it truth, or a deft move in the game of bridge? In a modest Chelsea flat, Anne Meredith sat across from Superintendent Battle, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The room was a stark contrast to Mrs. Lorimer's elegance faded curtains, a sagging sofa, and a chipped teapot on the table. Rhoda Dawes, her friend and flatmate, hovered nearby, her freckled face anxious. "Miss Meredith," Battle said, his tone firm but not unkind. "Let's talk about Mrs. Benson. Digitalis poisoning. Accidental, they said. You were her companion. What happened?" Anne's eyes widened, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was an accident. She took too much of her medicine. I tried to help her, I swear. I didn't know the dose was wrong until it was too late." Battle leaned forward, and Shaitana, he mentioned accidents at dinner. "You flinched, Miss Meredith. Why?" I don't know," she stammered. "He was staring at me like he knew something. But I didn't do anything to him. I was playing bridge. I never left the table." Rhoda interjected, her voice sharp. "She's telling the truth, Superintendent. Anne wouldn't hurt a fly. She's been through enough without you hounding her." Battle raised an eyebrow but said nothing, jotting a note in his pad. As he left, he glanced back at Anne, her delicate frame trembling. Innocence, or a performance worthy of the stage? Colonel Race's inquiries led him to a smoky pub in Soho, where a retired safari guide nursed a pint and a grudge. The man, weathered as the African plains, spoke of Major Despard with a mix of awe and resentment. "Despard's a hard man," the guide said, his voice rough as gravel. "Saved my life once, pulled me from a crocodile's jaws. But that Langley, business hinky if you ask me." They argued over a map some old ruins Langley was obsessed with. Next day, "Langley's dead, bullet through his chest. Despard swore it was an accident, said his gun misfired. But I saw his eyes cold, like he'd planned it." Race sipped his ale, his mind turning. "And Shaitana, did Despard ever mention him?" The guide shook his head. "Never heard the name, but Despard's not one for chatter. If he killed that Shaitana fella, he'd do it clean and walk away whistling." As Race stepped into the night, the guide's words lingered. Despard, a man of action, a man of secrets. But was he a man of murder? Dr. Roberts' Harley Street office was a shrine to success, gleaming instruments, framed diplomas, and a receptionist who eyed Ariadne Oliver with polite suspicion. The doctor himself was all charm, his smile as polished as his cufflinks. "Mrs. Oliver," he said, leaning back in his chair, "I'm a busy man. What's this about Shaitana? Dreadful business. But I hardly knew the chap." Ariadne, her novelist's instincts on high alert, pressed him. "Oh, come now, Dr. Shaitana was dropping hints all over dinner crimes, secrets, things swept under the rug. He looked at you when he mentioned professional indiscretions. Care to enlighten me?" Roberts laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Shat was a showman, nothing more. I've lost patients, every doctor does. Mrs. Craddock, for instance, tragic case, heart failure. Her family was distraught, made wild accusations, all nonsense, of course." Ariadne tilted her head, her curls bouncing. "Nonsense, or inconvenient truth. You were at the bridge table, Doctor. You could have slipped away, grabbed that stiletto." His smile faltered. "You've been reading too many of your own books, Mrs. Oliver. I'm a healer, not a killer." As she left, Ariadne couldn't shake the feeling that Robert's charm was a mask, one that hid something far uglier. That evening, the detectives reconvened at Poirot's flat, a cozy space filled with the scent of tisane and the crackle of a fire. Poirot stood before a chalkboard where he'd scrawled the suspects' names, each linked to a web of motives and secrets. "Ms. Amos," he said, his voice low, "we have uncovered shadows, but not yet the truth. Dr. Roberts, with his charm, and his dead patient, Mrs. Lorimer, with her icy control and her husband's convenient death, Major Despard, with his jungle tragedy, and Mademoiselle Meredith, with her trembling hands and her poisoned employer. Each has a past, each has a reason to fear Shaitana's knowledge." Battle rubbed his chin. "But which one snapped? Shaitana was stabbed in a room full of people. Takes guts or desperation." Race nodded. "Despard's got the nerve for it, but Roberts, he's too smooth. I don't trust him." Ariadne waved a hand. "Oh, it's Anne Meredith. She's the dark horse, those big eyes, that innocent act. I'd bet my next book she's hiding something." Poirot smiled faintly. "Patience, Madame Oliver. The truth, it is like a fine wine, it must breathe. Tomorrow, we observe, we question, we provoke. The bridge scores. They tell a story, but so do the silences between the words. We must listen to both. As the fire died down, Poirot sipped his tisane, his mind racing. The shadows of the past were closing in, and somewhere among them, a killer waited, their next move hidden in the fog. Chapter 6. The Queen of Spades. The London evening draped itself over Belgravia like a velvet curtain. The gas lamps cast in golden halos on the damp cobblestones. Hercule Poirot stood outside Mrs. Lorimer's elegant townhouse, his gloved hands clasped behind his back, his sharp eyes scanning the wrought iron gate. The air carried a faint whiff of coal smoke, mingling with the crisp scent of autumn leaves. Inside that house, he knew, lay a woman whose cool intellect and guarded demeanor had piqued his curiosity more than any other guest at Chitona's ill-fated dinner party. Mrs. Lorimer, the queen of the bridge table, held secrets as tightly as she held her cards. Tonight, Poirot intended to glimpse the hand she played. He adjusted his hat, its brim shielding his face from the drizzle, and murmured to himself, "The mind, it is like a chessboard. No, but at bridge, one does not play alone. The partner, the opponent, they all reveal themselves in time." His thoughts drifted to the bridge game at Chitona's, where Mrs. Lorimer's precise bids and unflinching composure had stood out like a diamond in a coal heap. Yet her eyes, when Chitona's taunts about undetected crimes had sliced through the room, had flickered not with fear, but with something deeper, something Poirot could not yet name. He rang the bell, its chime echoing faintly through the house. A maid, her apron starched to perfection, opened the door and ushered him into a drawing-room that exuded restrained elegance. The walls, papered in soft sage green, bore portraits of stern-faced ancestors, their gazes as unyielding as their descendants. A fire crackled in the grate, casting shadows that danced across a polished mahogany table. Mrs. Lorimer rose from a high-backed chair, her silver hair catching the firelight like a halo. She wore a gown of deep charcoal, its simplicity belying the sharp intelligence in her grey eyes. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice smooth as polished stone, "to what do I owe this unexpected visit?" Poirot bowed, his moustache twitching into a courteous smile. "Madame, I come to discuss a matter most delicate. The tragedy at Mr. Chitona's home has left many questions, and I believe you may hold answers." Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she gestured to a chair. "Please, sit. I expected you might come, though I confess I hoped otherwise." As Poirot settled into the plush seat, he noted the room's details. A crystal decanter on a sideboard, a half-played game of patience laid out on a small table, and a single photograph in a silver frame. A man, perhaps in his 40s, with a stern jaw and eyes that mirrored Mrs. Lorimer's, her late husband, no doubt. Chitona's insinuations about her death in her past had struck a nerve, and Poirot intended to find out why. "Madame," he began, his tone gentle yet probing. "Mr. Chitona, he spoke of crimes that go unpunished. His words, they seemed to unsettle you. May I ask why?" Mrs. Lorimer's fingers, resting on the arm of her chair, tightened briefly. "You are observant, Monsieur Chitona was a cruel man, playing games with truths he could not possibly understand. But I assure you, his words were mere theatrics. I have nothing to hide." Poirot tilted his head, his eyes never leaving hers. "And yet, madame, I sense a weight upon you. The bridge game, it revealed much. Your precision, your control, it is the mark of a mind that plans, that calculates, but also, perhaps, a mind that conceals." Her laugh was sharp, like the snap of a card on a table. "You see conspiracy in every shuffle, Monsieur Poirot. I played bridge, as I always do, with focus. If you seek a murderer, look to those less disciplined. Anne Meredith, for instance." She was nervous, fumbling her cards, glancing at as if he held a guillotine over her head. Poirot's eyebrows rose. "Mademoiselle Meredith, you observed her closely." Then, Mrs. Lorimer leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I observe everyone, Monsieur Poirot. It is how one wins at bridge and in life." Anne was near Chitona's chair during the dummy hand. I saw her linger, her hand brushing the table where that stiletto lay. She was pale, trembling, a guilty conscience, perhaps. The accusation hung in the air, heavy as the smoke curling from the fire. Poirot's mind raced. Anne Meredith, the youngest of the suspects, had indeed seemed fragile, her delicate features masking a quiet intensity. But was Mrs. Lorimer's observation a genuine clue or a deft deflection? He leaned back, steepling his fingers. A serious claim, madame. To see such a thing, it requires certainty. And yet, you did not speak of this too, Superintendent Battle. Her eyes narrowed. I prefer to keep my own counsel until I am sure. I am no gossip, Monsieur Poirot, but I will not be drawn into Shaitona's games posthumously. If Anne is guilty, you will find the proof. You have a reputation for it. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. And what of Dr. Roberts' charm? It is like a well-played trump card. No, but perhaps too bold, too practiced. Mrs. Lorimer's gaze flickered to the photograph on the table, then back to Poirot. Dr. Roberts is a man who enjoys attention. His bids at bridge were reckless, almost performative, but murder, that requires a colder heart than his bluster suggests. And Major word Poirot pressed, his voice soft but insistent. She hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of her chair. Dispard is a man of action, not calculation. He plays bridge as he lives boldly, but not deceitfully. If he killed, it would be in a moment of passion, not with a stiletto in the dark. Poirot leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. And yet, madame, you speak of them all with such clarity, as if you have studied their souls. Tell me, what did Shaitona know of you? The room seemed to still, the crackle of the fire the only sound. Mrs. Lorimer's face hardened, but her voice remained steady. My husband died 10 years ago, Monsieur Poirot, a sudden illness, the doctors said. Shaitona, with his penchant for drama, hinted at poison. Absurd, of course. I loved my husband. His death was a tragedy, not a crime. Poirot's mustache twitched, but he said nothing, letting the silence press against her. Finally, she rose, her movements graceful but deliberate. It is late, Monsieur Poirot. I have told you what I know. If you seek the truth, look to the bridge table. The cards do not lie. He stood, bowing slightly. Merci, madame. Your candor is appreciated, but I warn you the truth. It has a way of revealing itself, no matter how well one plays the game. As he stepped into the chilly night, Poirot's mind churned. Mrs. Lorimer's accusation against Anne was too precise, too convenient. Was she protecting herself, or did she genuinely suspect the younger woman? And that photograph, her husband's eyes had held the same steely resolve as hers. Shaitona's taunts about poison lingered in Poirot's thoughts, a thread he could not yet unravel. The next morning, Poirot sat in his modest flat, a cup of tisane steaming before him. The bridge scores from Shaitona's game lay spread across his desk, their neat columns a puzzle waiting to be solved. Superintendent Battle had sent them over, along with a note. No fingerprints on the stiletto. Room locked from the inside. Was stumped. Poirot, your move. Poirot traced a finger over Mrs. Lorimer's scores. Her bids were flawless, her play meticulous. Yet there was a moment, a single overbid in the third rubber that seemed out of character. A lapse, he murmured, or a signal. He closed his eyes, picturing the bridge table, Mrs. Lorimer's steady hands, Anne's nervous glances, Dr. Roberts' booming laugh, Dispard's quiet intensity, and Shait lounging by the fire, his eyes glittering like a predator's. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Ariadne Oliver, her hat askew and her scarf trailing, burst into the room, her voice a mix of exasperation and excitement. Poirot, you'll never guess what I've found. I was poking about, you know, asking questions, as only a novelist can, and I heard something odd about Mrs. Lorimer. A neighbor saw a man lurking near her house last night, after you left. Poirot's eyes narrowed. A man. Describe him. Madame Oliver. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark coat and hat. The neighbor couldn't see his face, but he was there for nearly an hour, just standing in the shadows. Creepy. Don't you think? Could it be one of our suspects? Poirot's mind flashed to Major Dispard, whose military bearing matched the description. Or perhaps Dr. Roberts, whose charm might mask a stalker's intent. It is possible, he said slowly, but we must be cautious. A shadow is not evidence. Mrs. Oliver huffed, plopping into a chair. Well, it's more than Battle's got. He's still interrogating the servants. Poor Diaz and Colonel races off chasing some wild lead about Shaitona's art collection. Says it might point to a motive. Honestly, Poirot, you're the only one making sense of this mess. Poirot smiled faintly. The sense, it comes from order, Madame Oliver, and order, it comes from the little grey cells. Tell me, What do you make of Mrs. Lorimer's accusation against Mademoiselle Meredith? Mrs. Oliver's eyes widened. Oh, that's juicy. Anne's such a mouse, but mice can bite, you know. If Mrs. Lorimer saw her near the stiletto, it's damning, but why would she point the finger so directly? It's almost too neat, don't you think? Precisement, Poirot said, tapping the bridge scores. Mrs. Lorimer plays a careful game, but she is not without risk. Her accusation, it is like a bid in bridge calculated, but perhaps a bluff. Mrs. Oliver leaned forward, her novelist's imagination alight. You think she's hiding something? Oh, Poirot, what if she killed Shaitona herself? She's so composed, so controlled, it's the perfect mask for a murderer. Poirot held up a hand. Patience, madame. We do not accuse without proof. But I agree, Mrs. Lorimer is a puzzle. Her past, her composure, her accusation, they are pieces of a mosaic. We must find how they fit. The day unfolded with a flurry of activity. Poirot visited Anne Meredith, finding her in a modest flat, filled with faded lace curtains and nervous energy. Her delicate hands trembled as she poured tea, her eyes darting to the window, as if expecting a pursuer. I didn't do it, Monsieur Poirot, she whispered. Mrs. Lorimer's lying. I never touched that stiletto. I was playing bridge, just like the others. Poirot watched her closely, noting the flush in her cheeks, the way her fingers twisted a handkerchief. And yet, mademoiselle, Mrs. Lorimer says she saw you near Mr. Shaitona. Why would she say such a thing? Anne's eyes filled with tears. She hates me. She thinks I'm weak, a nobody. But I'm not a killer. I swear it. Poirot's voice softened. Tell me, mademoiselle, of your past. Shaitona, he spoke of crimes unpunished. What did he know of you? Anne's face crumpled. There was an accident. My employer, years ago. She ate something bad, digitalis, they said. I was her companion, but I didn't poison her. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. Poirot nodded, filing away her words. Digitalis, a poison derived from foxglove, was subtle, easily mistaken for natural causes. Shaitona's taunts had been specific, and Anne's fear suggested he had struck close to the truth. But was her panic that of a guilty woman or a scapegoat? That evening Poirot returned to Mrs. Lorimer's home, determined to press her further. The maid led him to the drawing-room, but the atmosphere had shifted. The fire burned low, casting long shadows, and Mrs. Lorimer stood by the window, her silhouette rigid against the glass. You return so soon, Monsieur Poirot, she said, without turning. Have you come to accuse me? Not to accuse madame, but to understand, Poirot replied, stepping closer. The shadow scene outside your home last night, it troubles me. And your words about Mademoiselle Meredith, they are like a card played too early. Tell me, what do you fear? She turned, her eyes blazing. Fear? I fear nothing, Monsieur Poirot, but I am not blind. Someone in that room killed Chateau, and I will not be next. Her words sent a chill through Poirot. He opened his mouth to reply, but a sudden crash from the hall interrupted him. The maid's scream followed, shrill and panicked. Poirot and Mrs. Lorimer rushed to the sound, finding the maid clutching a shattered vase, her face pale. I saw him, she gasped. Outside the window a man in a dark coat, watching. Poirot darted to the window, but the street was empty, the drizzle blurring the lamplight. Mrs. Lorimer's hand gripped his arm, her voice low. You see, Monsieur Poirot, the game is not over. Has he left her home, the night closing around him? Poirot's mind raced. The shadow, the accusation, the bridge scores, they were threads in a tapestry of deceit. Mrs. Lorimer was a queen, but was she playing her own game or someone else's? And the figure in the dark disbarred Roberts, or another player entirely? The answers lay in the cards, in the moves made and unmade. Poirot tightened his scarf against the cold, his little grey cells alight with the challenge. The Queen of Spades had played her hand, but the game was far from won. Chapter 7. A deadly bluff. The rain-slicked streets of London glistened under the sodium glow of street lamps, casting long, wavering shadows that seemed to whisper secrets of their own. Hercule Poirot stood beneath the awning of Mrs. Lorimer's elegant townhouse, his polished shoes just shy of the creeping damp. The news of her death had struck like a thunderclap, shattering the fragile web of clues he'd so carefully spun. Superintendent Battle, his broad frame filling the doorway, gestured him inside with a grim nod. The air was heavy with the scent of polished wood and something sharp of fear, perhaps, or the faint metallic tang of death. It's a bad business, Poirot, Battle said, his voice low. as if reluctant to disturb the stillness of the house. Found her this morning, syringe by her side. Looks like suicide. But, he trailed off, his eyes narrowing. You don't think so, do you? Poirot's mustache twitched, a subtle sign of his mind's restless churn. Non, mon ami. Suicide is a confession, and Mrs. Lorimer was not a woman to confess so easily. Her mind was a fortress, precise and unyielding, like her bridge game. This is a move by another player. They stepped into the drawing room, where the scene awaited them. Mrs. Lorimer lay slumped in a high-backed chair, her face serene but unnaturally pale, as if death had painted her with a delicate brush. A syringe gleamed on the side table, its needle catching the light like a cruel wink. Nearby, a vial of morphine lay uncapped, its contents drained. The room was pristine, save for a single overturned glass of sherry, its amber stain seeping into the Persian rug. Poirot's eyes darted over the scene, cataloguing every detail. The angle of her arm, the faint crease in her silk dress, the untouched fireplace. The window, he murmured, crossing to the tall sash windows overlooking the garden. They were shut, but a faint smudge on the latch caught his attention, a trace of oil, perhaps, or something more telling. He turned to Battle. Has anyone spoken to the staff? The neighbors? Battle nodded. The maid found her at dawn. No signs of a struggle, no forced entry. But there's a window cleaner who works this street. He's waiting in the kitchen. Says he saw something odd last night. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Odd, you say, Bon? Let us hear from this window cleaner. The smallest ripple in the pond may lead us to the stone that caused it. The kitchen was a stark contrast to the opulent drawing room, its plain tiles and copper pots grounding the scene in mundane reality. The window cleaner, a wiry man named Tompkins, with a face weathered by years of outdoor labor, sat at the table, clutching a chipped mug of tea. His eyes flicked nervously between Poirot and Battle, as if he feared being accused of the crime himself. Tell us, Mr. Tompkins, Poirot began, his voice smooth as velvet. What did you see last night that was, as you say, odd? Tompkins swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. I was finishing up late, cleaning the windows on the house next door, Mrs. Grayson's place. Must have been near 10 o'clock, dark as pitch, but I had my lantern. I saw someone leaving Mrs. Lorimer's house, through the back garden gate. Quick, like they didn't want to be seen. Poirot leaned forward, his hands clasped. This someone, man or woman, tall or short? Describe if you please. Couldn't say for sure, Tompkins admitted, scratching his stubbled chin. They wore a dark coat, hood up, moved fast, though, and quiet. I only caught a glimpse 'cause my lantern reflected off the gate's latch as it swung shut. Thought it was strange, seeing as Mrs. Lorimer don't get many visitors that late. Battle jotted a note. Anything else? Did they carry anything? A bag, perhaps? Tompkins frowned, thinking might have had a small case, like a doctor's bag. Couldn't swear to it though. My eyes ain't what they used to be in the dark. Poirot's smile was faint but approving. You have done well, Mr. Tompkins. Your eyes, they see more than you know. We shall trouble you no further, for now. As Tompkins shuffled out, Battle turned to Poirot. A doctor's bag. That points to Roberts, doesn't it? He's the only one who'd carry something like that. Poirot tilted his head, his expression unreadable. Perhaps, mon ami, but the mind that plays at murder is not so obvious. We must consider all possibilities. A bag may be carried to deceive, just as a suicide may be staged to conceal. Back, in the drawing room, Colonel Race and Ariadne Oliver had joined them, their faces etched with concern. Race, his military bearing softened by worry, gestured to a small pile of letters on the side table. Found these near the syringe. They look like confessions, Mrs. Lorimer admitting to Shaitana's murder, but the handwriting's off. Too neat, almost mechanical. Ariadne Oliver, her usual flamboyance subdued, clutched her scarf. It's ghastly, Poirot. She was so composed, so sharp. I can't believe she'd kill herself, let alone murder Shaitana. It doesn't fit. Poirot picked up one of the letters, his gloved fingers tracing the inked lines. Nan, Madame Oliver, it does not fit. The words are hers, perhaps, but the hand that wrote them, I think not. This is a forgery, meant to close the book on Shaitana's death. But the killer has underestimated Hercule Poirot. He moved to the bridge table, still set up from the night of Shaitana's murder, its cards scattered like fallen leaves. He picked up a score sheet, his eyes narrowing as he studied the neat columns of numbers. The bridge game, he murmured. It is the key. The scores, they tell a story of the Minder, story of caution, of recklessness, of deception. Battle frowned. You keep saying that, Poirot. But how? They're just numbers. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Numbers, mon ami, are never just numbers. They are the footprints of the soul. Mrs. Lorimer played with precision. Yes, but her scores show moments of hesitation, as if her mind was elsewhere. Dr. Roberts, he bids boldly, recklessly, yet his play is cautious. Anne Meredith, she is timid, but her scores betray moments of daring. And Major Despard, his game is steady, but there is a pattern of distraction. One of these players was not playing bridge alone that night. They were playing at murder. Race crossed his arms. So you think the killer used the bridge game as cover to slip into Shaitana's room and stab him? Exactement, Poirot said, his voice sharp. And now they have struck again, to silence Mrs. Lorimer before she could reveal what she knew, or what the killer feared she knew. Ariadne shivered. But who? Dr. Roberts, with his charming smile, Anne with her dyed innocence, or Despard, with that brooding intensity? Poirot's eyes gleamed. That, madame, is what we shall discover. But first, we must return to the night of Shaitana's death. I must see the game as it was played. For detectives reconvened at Shaitana's mansion, now eerily silent without its flamboyant host. The bridge tables stood untouched, preserved as evidence. Poirot insisted on recreating the game, assigning each detective to a suspect's position. Battle took Dr. Roberts' seat, Race sat as Major Despard, Ariadne played Anne Meredith, and Poirot himself assumed Mrs. Lorimer's role. They dealt the cards, following the score sheets meticulously, as Poirot narrated the game's flow. Observe, he said, laying down a card. Mrs. Lorimer plays the Queen of Spades here, a strong move, but she hesitates. Why? Because she sees something or someone moving in the shadows. Dr. Roberts bids 3 hearts, bold, but his play is cautious, as if he wishes to draw no attention. Anne Meredith, she fumbles her cards, nervous, but then makes a daring bid. And Despard, he plays steadily, but his scores show moments of distraction, as if his eyes were elsewhere. Ariadne frowned, tossing down a card. This is all very well, Poirot, but how does it tell us who killed Shaitana, or Mrs. Lorimer? Poirot's fingers drummed on the table. Patience, madame. The bridge game is a mirror of the mind. The killer, they moved with purpose, but they could not hide their nature entirely. The scores, they reveal a moment when one player's attention was not on the game. Dr. Roberts' bold bidding stopped abruptly in the 3rd round, as if he had left the table. The timing it aligns with when Shaitana was stabbed. Battle leaned forward. So you're saying Roberts slipped away, stabbed Shaitana, and returned before anyone noticed? Poirot nodded. It is possible, but we must test this theory. The killer is clever, but not infallible. They have left a trail, and we shall follow it. The trail led them to Dr. Roberts' Harley Street practice, a sleek office lined with medical texts and polished mahogany. Roberts greeted them with his usual charm, his smile as bright as ever, but Poirot noted the faint tension in his jaw, the way his fingers lingered on the edge of his desk. Gentlemen, Mrs. Oliver, Roberts said, gesturing to the chairs. This is a grim business about Mrs. Lorimer. Suicide, I hear. Tragic. Poirot's eyes locked onto his. Tragic. Oui, but not suicide, doctor. Murder. And I believe you know more than you say. Robert's smile faltered, but he recovered quickly. Me, Poirot, you flatter me with your suspicions. I was playing bridge when Shaitana died, and I was home last night, as my housekeeper can attest. Your housekeeper, Poirot said, his voice soft but piercing, who conveniently retires early. And your bag, doctor, the one you carry for house calls, where was it last night? Roberts blinked, his composure slipping. My bag, at home, of course. I don't carry it unless I'm seeing a patient. Poirot leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. And yet, a man was seen leaving Mrs. Lorimer's house with a bag much like yours. A man who moved quickly, in the dark, as if he had something to hide. Roberts laughed, but it was strained. You're grasping at straws, Poirot. I'm a doctor, not a murderer. Perhaps, Poirot said, rising. But the mind, it betrays. Us all, we shall see. Doctor, we shall see. That evening Poirot gathered the detectives in his flat, the fire casting flickering shadows on the walls. He spread the bridge scores across the table, his fingers tracing the numbers like a musician, reading a score. The key is here, he said. Dr. Roberts' game faltered at the precise moment Shaitona was killed. But Mrs. Lorimer, she saw something. She knew, or suspected, and that is why she died. Race frowned. But why forge those letters? Why make it look like she killed Shaitana? To close the case, Poirot said, the killer believed that if Mrs. Lorimer was blamed, we would stop looking. But they did not account for the window cleaner, nor for the bridge scores, nor for Hercule Poirot. Ariadne clapped her hands. It's like one of my novels. A clever trap, a hidden clue, and the detective closing in. What's next, Poirot? Poirot's smile was sly. Next, madame, we set a trap of our own. Dr. Roberts is bold, but he is not fearless. We shall confront him with a witness who does not exist, but who will make him tremble. The trap was set for the following evening, in the same drawing room where Shaitana had died. Poirot had arranged for an actor, a man with a weathered face and a convincing air of authority, to pose as a witness. The detectives gathered the suspects Dr. Roberts, Anne Meredith, and Major Despardent, the pretense of new evidence. The room buzzed with tension, the chandelier casting jagged light across their faces. Poirot stood at the center, his presence commanding. Mies, Amos, we are here because a new witness has come forward. A man who saw the killer leave Shaitana's house the night of the murder. He stands before you now. The actor stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Roberts. I was across the street, delivering coal. I saw you, Doctor. You slipped out the back, your bag in hand, just after 10 o'clock. Roberts' face drained of color, his hands clenching. That's absurd. I was here, playing bridge. You've got the wrong man. Poirot's voice was calm, relentless. And yet, the bridge scores tell a different story. Your bids, Doctor. They stopped for a full minute, the exact time Shaitona was stabbed. And Mrs. Lorimer, she saw you move, did she not? That is why you killed her, to silence her truth. Roberts stood, his chair scraping against the floor. This is madness. You have no proof, no real witness. This man's lying. The actor didn't flinch, his gaze steady. Poirot stepped closer, his voice a blade. Then why, Doctor, do you tremble? Why does your hand clutch your pocket, as if you fear what we might find? The room fell silent, the air thick with anticipation. Robert's eyes darted to the door, then back to Poirot, his charm crumbling like ash. You're bluffing, he whispered, but his voice cracked. Poirot smiled, cold and triumphant. Am I, Doctor, or have you played your final hand? Chapter 8. The ace up the sleeve. The London fog clung to the cobblestones like a conspirator, muffling the clatter of hooves and the distant chime of Big Ben. Hercule Poirot stood in the shadowed doorway of a discreet Mayfair townhouse, his gloved fingers adjusting the brim of his hat. The air was heavy with secrets, and Poirot's little grey cells thrummed with the rhythm of a case nearing its crescendo. Dr. Geoffrey Roberts, the charming physician with a smile too polished and eyes too sharp, had become the pivot of the investigation. The bridge scores, those cryptic tallies of bids and tricks, whispered to Poirot of a man whose recklessness at cards mirrored a darker audacity. Tonight Poirot would test that audacity, with a trap as delicate as a spider's web. Inside the townhouse, Superintendent Battle's broad frame filled the doorway to the drawing room, his expression as unyielding as granite. Colonel Race, lean and weathered, leaned against a mantelpiece, his eyes scanning the room with the vigilance of a man who'd faced treachery in far-flung corners of the empire. Ariadne Oliver, her auburn curls slightly askew, paced with a notebook, clutched to her chest, muttering about plot twists and unreliable narrators. The four detectives had gathered to orchestrate the evening's gambit, a psychological snare designed to crack Roberts' impeccable facade. Dr. Roberts is a man who plays to win, Poirot said, his voice low and precise, each word a polished gem. His bids at bridge were bold, almost reckless, as if he relished the risk. Such a man does not kill without confidence, but confidence can be his undoing. We must unsettle him. Mies, Amos, with a shadow of doubt. Battle grunted, folding his arms. You're sure about this actor business, Poirot? Sounds like a stage play, not police work. Mon cher Superintendent, the mind is a stage, and tonight we direct the performance. Dr. Roberts must believe he has truly seen for the first time. Race raised an eyebrow, a faint smile tugging at his lips. And this actor of yours, Poirot, he's reliable. Poirot's moustache twitched with satisfaction. Monsieur Harold Vance is a man of the theatre, a chameleon who can become anyone. We require he will be our witness, a figure from the shadows who claims to have seen Dr. Roberts near Shaitona's body. The truth, it is not necessary. It is the fear of truth that will undo him." Mrs. Oliver stopped pacing, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of a plot coming together. "It's like something out of my novels, a mysterious stranger, a killer, cornered by his own guilt. Oh, but what if Roberts doesn't crack? What if he's too clever? Then, Madame Oliver, we shall know he is innocent," Poirot replied, his green eyes glinting. "But I do not believe this is so. The bridge scores, they tell a story. Dr. Roberts played with a gambler's heart, bold, yet precise, as if he knew the outcome before the cards were dealt. Such a man would not hesitate to plunge a stiletto into Shaitana's heart or to silence Mrs. Lorimer when she became a threat. The plan was set. Harold Vance, a wiry actor with a knack for improvisation, had been briefed. He would pose as a waiter who'd worked at Shaitona's dinner party, claiming to have glimpsed Roberts lingering near the fireplace just before the murder. The confrontation would take place at the Savoy, in a private dining room Poirot had secured under the guise of a follow-up interview. The setting was crucial, opulent enough to stroke Roberts' ego, intimate enough to amplify his unease. The Savoy's private dining room glowed under the soft light of crystal chandeliers, the table set with gleaming silver and starched linens. Dr. Roberts arrived promptly at 8, his tailored suit immaculate, his smile as smooth as the claret in his glass. But Poirot noted the faint tightness around his eyes, the way his fingers lingered on the stem of his glass a fraction too long. The man was wary, a fox sensing a trap. "Mr. Poirot, Superintendent Battle, Colonel Race, Mrs. Oliver," Roberts greeted, his voice warm but measured. "I must say, this is quite the gathering. Another round of questions about poor Shaitona, I presume." "Indeed," Dr. Poirot said, gesturing to a chair. "Please, sit. We have new information, most intriguing, and we wish to share it with you." Roberts sat, crossing one leg over the other with practiced ease. "New information. I'm all ears, though I must warn you, my memory of that night is as clear as it was last week. Bridge, good company, and then, tragedy." Battle leaned forward, his voice gruff. "We've got a witness, Dr. Roberts, someone who saw more than you might have thought." Roberts' smile didn't falter, but his fingers tightened briefly on his glass. "A witness? How curious. I don't recall anyone lurking about, save for Shaitona himself. Poor devil." Poirot signaled to a waiter, who ushered in Harold Vance. The actor was transformed, his usual theatrical flair subdued, his posture slouched, his eyes darting nervously as befitted a man burdened by what he'd seen. Dressed in a slightly ill suit, he looked every inch the anxious servant. "This is Mr. Vance," Poirot said, his tone grave. "He was employed at Mr. Shaitona's dinner party, serving drinks and observing the guests. He has come forward with, let us say, a most illuminating recollection." Vance cleared his throat, his voice trembling just enough to sell the act. "I didn't want to get involved, sir, but I can't keep quiet no more. I saw you, Dr. Roberts, by the fireplace. You were standing close to Mr. Shaitona just before he was found dead. He looked, well, sir, he looked like he was up to something." Roberts laughed, a rich, easy sound that filled the room. "My dear man, I was playing bridge. The entire evening I was at the table with Mrs. Major Despard and Miss Meredith. Surely you're mistaken." Vance's eyes widened, his hands twisting together. "I know what I saw, sir. You stepped away from the table, said you was getting a drink, but you went to the fireplace, and I saw you leaning over Mr. Shaitona. I didn't think nothing of it then, but after he was found, well, I couldn't stop thinking about it." Poirot watched Roberts closely, noting the faint flush creeping up his neck, the way his smile tightened at the corners. The doctor sipped his claret, his movements deliberate. "This is absurd," he said, his tone still light but edged with steel. "I never left the bridge table. Ask my partners, they'll confirm it." "Oh, we shall," Race interjected, his voice calm but probing. "But memories can be selective, doctor, and the bridge scores, they tell a different story. Your bids were bold, almost reckless, as if you were distracted by something or someone." Robert's eyes flicked to Poirot, a spark of unease betraying his composure. "Bridge scores. You're building a case on how I played a game. This is preposterous." Mrs. Oliver, unable to resist, leaned forward with a dramatic flourish. "It's not just the game, Dr. Roberts, it's the psychology of it. A man who bids like you did taking risks, pushing boundaries. He's not just playing cards, he's playing with fate. Roberts set his glass down with a soft clink, his smile now a thin line. Mrs. Oliver, your imagination is as vivid as your novels, but I'm a doctor, not a character in one of your mysteries. I had no reason to harm Shatana, and I certainly didn't sneak off to stab him. Poirot tilted his head, his eyes gleaming like polished jade. And yet, Doctor, the scores do not lie. They show a man who played with confidence, yes, but also with a certain distraction. A man who, perhaps, was watching the room, waiting for the moment to act. And then there is Mrs. Lorimer. Robert's expression froze, just for a moment. Mrs. Lorimer, what does she have to do with this? Everything, Poirot said softly. Her death, so convenient for someone who feared her knowledge. A forged letter, a staged suicide. But the window cleaner, he saw a visitor to her home that night, a man, Doctor, who matches your description. The room seemed to shrink, the air growing thick with tension. Robert's fingers twitched, as if longing to grasp something solid. This is a fabrication, he said, his voice low. You're grasping at straws, Poirot. Am I? Poirot rose, his small frame commanding the room. Then let us test your certainty. Mr. Vance, describe again what you saw by the fireplace. Vance, fully in character, stammered, I saw you, sir, leaning over Mr. Shatana. You had something in your hand, something small and shiny. I thought it was a cigarette case, but now I ain't so sure. Robert stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is enough. I won't be slandered by some hired lackey. I demand to know who's behind this charade. Poirot's voice cut through the outburst, calm and unyielding. The truth, Doctor, is behind it. The truth that you feared Shaitana's knowledge of your past, a patient perhaps, who died under your care. An anthrax infection, so rare, so convenient, for a man with access to such things. Robert's face paled, his charm crumbling like ash. You have no proof, he whispered, but the words lacked conviction. Battle stepped forward, his bulk imposing. We have enough, Doctor. The bridge scores, the window cleaner's testimony, and now your reaction. Care to explain yourself? For a moment, silence reigned. Then Roberts sank back into his chair, his shoulders slumping. You're clever, Poirot, he said, his voice hollow. Too clever. But you're wrong about one thing. I didn't plan it. Shaitana, he pushed me too far. That night, his taunts, his insinuations about my past. I saw the stiletto on the table, and I acted. It was a moment of madness. The confession hung in the air, a heavy, bitter thing. Mrs. Oliver gasped, her notebook forgotten. Race's eyes narrowed, his hand instinctively moving to his side, as if expecting a weapon. Battle remained impassive, but his nod to Poirot was one of respect, and Mrs. Lorimer. Poirot pressed, his voice relentless. Was that also madness? Robert's gaze dropped to the table, his hands trembling. She knew too much. She saw me near Shaitana, just as this actor claims. I couldn't let her talk. I went to her house, used the syringe. It was quick, clean. I thought it would look like suicide. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. And the bridge scores. Doctor, they betrayed you. Your bids, so bold, so reckless, revealed a man who thrives on risk, a man who would kill to protect his secrets. Roberts laughed, a broken, bitter sound. You and your damned scores. I should have known a man like you would see through me. Battle signaled to two constables waiting outside, who entered to escort Roberts away. As the doctor was led out, his polished facade gone, Poirot turned to his companions. The actor, he was a ruse. Mies, Amos. Mr. Vance saw nothing. But the bridge scores, they were the true witness. They told me of a man who played not just to win, but to dominate. And in that, I found my killer. Mrs. Oliver clapped her hands, her eyes sparkling. Brilliant. Mr. Poirot, it's like the climax of a novel, only better, because it's real. Reyes chuckled, shaking his head. You're a devil, Poirot, using an actor to trap a killer. That's a new one. Battle, ever practical, grunted. Let's hope the courts see it your way. But I'll admit, you've got a knack for this. Poirot adjusted his lapel, a faint smile playing beneath his moustache. The human mind, it is a puzzle, but one I am always pleased to solve. Now, let us return to the bridge scores. There is still one matter to resolve the innocence of the others. The fog outside thickened, curling around the Savoy's windows like a shroud. The case was nearly closed. but Poirot's mind was already turning to the final threads: Major Despard, Anne Meredith, and the delicate dance of truth and deception. That would bring the mystery to its end. The room at the Savoy seemed to exhale as the constables led Dr. Roberts away, his confession still echoing in the minds of the 4 detectives. Poirot, however, was not one to linger on triumph. His thoughts darted to the remaining suspects, their motives and alibis still tangled like the threads of a half-finished tapestry. Major Despard and Anne Meredith had formed an uneasy alliance, their mutual suspicion palpable during the investigation. Poirot suspected their secrets were less deadly than Roberts, but no less compelling. Earlier that day, before the confrontation with Roberts, Poirot had visited Major Despard at his modest flat in Chelsea. The explorer's home was a study in contrasts. Maps and artifacts from distant jungles adorned the walls, yet the furniture was sparse, almost Spartan. Despard, with his weathered face and piercing blue eyes, had greeted Poirot with a guarded nod. "You're here about Shaitona, I presume," Despard said, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey without asking. "I've told you everything I know. I was playing bridge, focused on the game, didn't see a thing." Poirot accepted the glass but did not drink, his eyes scanning Despard's face. "Major, you are a man of action, not deception. Yet your past, it carries a shadow. The safari accident, Dr. Campbell, was it a man shot under your command? An accident, or something more?" Despard's jaw tightened, his hand pausing mid-sip. "You've done your homework, Poirot. Campbell was a fool, wandering off during a hunt. I fired to scare off a lion, and he got in the way. Tragic, but no crime." Poirot tilted his head, his voice soft but probing. "And yet, Shaitona believed otherwise. His collection of murderers, it included you. Why?" Despard set his glass down, his eyes narrowing. "Shaitona was a vulture, picking at old wounds for his amusement. He heard rumors, twisted them to suit his game. I didn't kill Campbell, and I didn't kill Shaitona." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "The bridge scores, Major, they show you played with caution, unlike Dr. Roberts, a man who calculates, who waits. But for what? To protect yourself, or another?" Despard's gaze flickered, a hint of surprise in his eyes. "You read too much into cards, Poirot. I played to win, nothing more." But Poirot had sensed a deeper truth. Despard's caution at the bridge table was not fear, but loyalty, a man protecting someone. Perhaps Anne Meredith, whose nervous glances and fragile demeanor had caught his attention. Poirot filed this away, a piece of the puzzle yet to be placed. Anne Meredith, by contrast, was a study in vulnerability, her delicate features and wide eyes masking a resilience Poirot found intriguing. He had met her at her friend Rhoda Dawes' flat, a cheerful space filled with mismatched furniture and vibrant cushions. Anne sat by the window, her hands folded tightly in her lap, as if bracing for a storm. "Miss Meredith," Poirot began, his voice gentle, "you were at the bridge table with Dr. Roberts, Mrs. Lorimer, and Major Despard. Yet your play, it was hesitant, distracted. Why?" Anne's eyes darted to Rhoda, who hovered nearby with a protective frown. "I was nervous, Mr. Poirot. Mr. Shaitana's talk of murder, it unsettled me. I'm not used to such company." Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "And the matter of your former employer, Mrs. Benson, a poisoning, most tragic. Shaitona knew of this, did he not?" Anne's face paled, her voice barely a whisper. "It was an accident. Mrs. Benson took the wrong medicine. I was cleared of any wrongdoing." "Cleared, yes," Poirot said, his tone soothing yet relentless. "But suspicion, it lingers, does it not? And Mrs. Lorimer, she saw you near Shaitona that night. Did she speak of it to you?" Anne's hands trembled, and Rhoda stepped forward, her voice sharp. "That's enough, Mr. Poirot. Anne's been through enough. She didn't kill anyone." Poirot raised a hand, his smile disarming. "Mademoiselle Dawes, I seek only the truth. Miss Meredith, your fear, it is understandable. But the bridge scores, they tell me you were distracted, perhaps by guilt, perhaps by fear. Which is it?" Anne's eyes filled with tears, but she held his gaze. "I was afraid of Shaitana. He knew things I wanted to forget, but I didn't kill him. I swear it." Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing her words, her tears, her trembling hands. Anne Meredith was no murderer, but she was hiding something, a secret that bound her to Despard, perhaps in a pact of mutual protection. Back at the Savoy, as the fog pressed against the windows, Poirot shared these observations with his fellow detectives. The confrontation with Roberts had been a triumph, but the case was not yet complete. Despard and Anne remained enigmas, their motives intertwined like the cards in Shaitana's deadly game. Despard's protecting her, Ray said, lighting a cigarette. I saw it in his eyes when we questioned them together. He's not the killing type, but he'd take a bullet for someone he cares about. Mrs. Oliver nodded, scribbling in her notebook. It's romantic, in a tragic sort of way. The rugged explorer and the fragile girl, bound by secrets. But what secrets, Mr. Poirot? Secrets of the heart, perhaps, Poirot mused, his fingers tracing the edge of a bridge score sheet. Miss Meredith fears her past, but not murder. Major Despard fears for her, not for himself. Their bridge play, it was a dance of caution and trust, unlike Dr. Roberts' reckless gambles. Battle frowned, his practical mind grappling with Poirot's abstractions. So, you're saying they're innocent? Both of them? Innocent of murder? Yes, Poirot said, but not of secrets. We must untangle these threads, Mies, Amos, to ensure no shadow remains. The detectives agreed to reconvene the next day, their task now to clear Despard and Anne while ensuring Robert's confession held in court. Poirot stepped into the fog, his mind alight with the patterns of the case. The bridge scores had unmasked a killer, but they also told a story of loyalty, fear, and redemption. As he disappeared into the mist, humming a soft tune, Poirot knew the final hand was yet to be played. Chapter 9. The final hand. The London night pressed against the windows of Mr. Chatona's opulent drawing-room, its darkness a silent witness to the unravelling drama within. Hercule Poirot stood at the centre of the room, his small, fastidious frame radiating an intensity that belied his stature. The air was thick with anticipation, the kind that precedes a storm. Around him, the remaining players in this deadly game of bridge superintendent battle, Colonel Race, Ariadne Oliver, Major Despard, Anne Meredith, and the prime suspect, Dr. Roberts, formed a tense semicircle. The bridge tables, once the stage for Chatona's macabre game, now stood as mute relics of a night that had claimed 2 lives. Poirot's eyes, sharp and gleaming like polished agates, fixed on Dr. Roberts. The doctor's usual charm, a polished veneer of confidence and wit, had begun to fray. His fingers twitched slightly, betraying a nervousness that no amount of practiced nonchalance could conceal. Poirot had orchestrated this moment with the precision of a maestro, and now the final notes were about to play. Mies, Amos, Poirot began, his voice low but commanding. We stand at the precipice of truth. Tonight we shall lay bare the heart of this mystery. A man has been murdered, Mr. Chitona, our host, stabbed with his own stiletto. And then Mrs. Lorimer, a woman of such formidable intellect, was silenced before she could reveal what she knew. 2 deaths, 1 killer, and a game of bridge that holds the key to it all. Ariadne Oliver, her wild curls barely contained under a crimson scarf, leaned forward, her novelist's imagination alight. You mean to say those wretched bridge scores are going to solve this? I've written murders solved with less, but this feels like a stretch, even for you, Poirot. Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile curling beneath it. Madame Oliver, the bridge scores are not merely numbers, they are a mirror to the soul. They reveal the character, the impulses, the very essence of the players. And one among us, his gaze swept the room, lingering on Roberts, played a hand far bolder than the cards permitted. Dr. Roberts chuckled, though the sound was brittle. Really, Poirot, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. Bridge is just a game, not a confession. Surely you don't think I'd risk everything over a few tricks? Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. Patience, Doctor, we shall come to that. But first, allow me to introduce someone who has been most enlightening. He gestured toward the door, where a man entered, a stranger to the group. He was wiry, with a weathered face and eyes that darted nervously. His clothes were plain, his posture hunched, as if unaccustomed to such grand surroundings. This, Poirot announced, is Mr. Thomas Grayson, a man who, by chance, was in the vicinity of Mrs. Lorimer's home on the night of her suicide. Mr. Grayson, pray, tell us what you saw. The room stilled. Grayson cleared his throat, his voice rough but steady. I'm a window cleaner by trade. Was working late that night, across the street from Mrs. Lorimer's place. Saw a man go in well dressed, carrying a case, like a doctor's bag. He was in a hurry, didn't look about. I thought it odd, 'cause it was past visiting hours. Then, Not long after, I heard a commotion shouting like. By the time I looked again, he was gone. Superintendent Battle's eyes narrowed. Can you describe this man, Mr. Grayson? Grayson hesitated, glancing at Poirot, who nodded encouragingly. Tallish dark hair, wore a fine coat, had a way about him, like he was used to being in charge. That's all I could make out. In the dark, Dr. Roberts' face paled, though he quickly masked it with a laugh. This is absurd. You're suggesting I was skulking about Mrs. Lorimer's house. I was at my club that night, playing cards with colleagues. You can ask them. Poirot's smile was serene, almost predatory. Oh, we have. Doctor, your colleagues recall you at the club until approximately 9 o'clock. Mrs. Lorimer's death, however, occurred closer to 11. Plenty of time, nest CEPA, for a man of your efficiency to make a visit. The room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in. As Poirot's words hung in the air, Anne Meredith, her delicate hands clasped tightly, glanced at Major Dispard, who stood rigid, his jaw set. The alliance they had formed, an uneasy truce, born of mutual suspicions, seemed to teeter on the edge of collapse. Colonel Race, ever the diplomat, spoke up. Poirot, you're building a case, but it's circumstantial. Grayson's testimony is compelling, but we need more. What's this about the bridge scores? Poirot paced slowly, his polished shoes clicking against the hardwood floor. The bridge scores, Colonel, are a map of the mind. Each bid, each play, reveals the player's nature. Major Dispard, for instance, plays with courage but man who takes risks only when the odds favor him. Mademoiselle Meredith plays timidly, her bids hesitant, as if fearing exposure. Mrs. Lorimer, God rest her soul, was precise, calculated, her every move a testament to her intellect. But you, Dr. Roberts, he paused, turning to face the doctor. Your bids were reckless, audacious, as if you were daring fate itself. Such a man, I thought, might also dare to kill. Roberts' laughter was gone now, replaced by a scowl. This is nonsense, Poirot. You're weaving a fairy tale out of a card game. I demand you produce real evidence, or I'll silence. Poirot's voice cracked like a whip, startling even Battle. You demand evidence. Very well. Let us return to the night of Mr. Shaitana's murder. The bridge game in the second room. You, Dr. Roberts, were partnered with Mrs. Lorimer against Major Dispard and Mademoiselle Meredith. The game was intense, was it not? Yet you found time to leave the table, to approach Mr. Shaitana as he sat by the fire, seemingly asleep. A stiletto, small and sharp, lay on the table nearby, a temptation for a man who feared exposure. Roberts stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is outrageous. I never left the table. Ask the others. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Oh, I have, and they recall moments, brief, fleeting moments when you excused yourself. A trip to the cloakroom, perhaps. A moment to fetch a drink. But it was enough. Enough to slip into the other room, to plunge the stiletto into Shaitana's heart, and to return before anyone noticed. Anne Meredith gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. But Mrs. Lorimer said she saw me near Mr. Shaitana. She told you that, Mr. Poirot? Poirot nodded gravely. Indeed, she did, and I believe she spoke the truth as she saw it. Mrs. Lorimer was a woman of integrity, but she was also clever. She suspected you, Dr. Roberts, and tried to protect Mademoiselle Meredith by casting suspicion on her. A noble act, but a fatal one. For you, Doctor, realized she knew too much, and so you visited her that night, armed with a syringe and a forged letter, to stage her suicide. Robert's face was a mask of fury now, his hands clenched into fists. You have no proof. This Grayson fellow could be lying, paid to spin a tale, and your bridge scores. They're nothing but numbers. Ascertain yourself, Poirot. I'm not the killer. Poirot stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. No proof, you say? Then let us test your nerve. Dr. Mr. Grayson, step forward. Grayson moved closer, his eyes locking onto Roberts. The doctor's composure faltered, a bead of sweat glistening on his brow. Poirot's voice was relentless. Mr. Grayson saw you, Doctor. He saw you enter Mrs. Lorimer's home. And I, Hercule Poirot, have seen your soul in the cards you played. You feared Shaitana knew of your pastor patient, perhaps, who died under mysterious circumstances. An anthrax infection, was it not? A rare and deadly poison, administered with the precision of a doctor. The room was silent, the weight of Poirot's words crushing. Robert's eyes darted to the door, as if calculating his escape. But Superintendent Battle, broad and immovable, blocked egress. "Stay where you are, Doctor," he said, his voice calm but ironclad. Poirot continued, his tone unyielding. "You killed Mr. Chateauneuf to silence him. You killed Mrs. Lorimer to protect your secret, but you could not silence the truth. The bridge scores betrayed you, your bold, reckless bids, your need to dominate, to control. And now, Mr. Grayson's testimony seals your fate." Robert's facade crumbled. His shoulders slumped, and his voice, when it came, was a hoarse whisper. "It was an accident. The anthrax. I didn't mean for it to spread. But Chateauneuf, he knew. He taunted me, flaunted it over dinner. I had to stop him. And Mrs. Lorimer, she was too clever. She'd have figured it out, told you all." "Ariadne." Oliver's eyes widened, her pen frozen above her notebook. "Good heavens, you're confessing." Robert's laugh was bitter. "What's the use? Your little Belgian detectives got me cornered. I stabbed Chateauneuf during a break in the game, quick, clean. Mrs. Lorimer was harder. I forged the letter, made it look like suicide. But you, Poirot, you and your damned cards." Battle stepped forward, his handcuffs glinting in the lamplight. "Dr. Roberts, you're under arrest for the murders of Mr. Chateauneuf and Mrs. Lorimer." As the cuffs clicked shut, Poirot turned to his companions. "Ariadne, Race, Battle," his voice softening. "The actor, Mr. Grayson, was a fiction. Mies Amos, a ruse to shake the truth from him. The real evidence was always in the bridge scores, their patterns, their psychology. They told me who Dr. Roberts was, a man who plays to win, at any cost." Ray shook his head, a wry smile on his lips. "You're a devil, Poirot, using an actor to trap him." Poirot shrugged, his mustache twitching. "The stage of life requires a performance, Colonel, and I, Hercule Poirot, am its director." The room erupted in murmurs as Battle led Roberts away. Anne Meredith sank into a chair, her face pale but relieved. Major Despard placed a hand on her shoulder, a silent gesture of solidarity. Ariadne Oliver scribbled furiously, already plotting her next novel. Poirot stepped to the window, gazing into the fog-shrouded night. The game was over. The final hand played. And yet, the little grey cells never rested. There would always be another mystery, another deck to shuffle. Chapter 10. The deck is cleared. The morning after Dr. Roberts' dramatic confession broke like a storm over London, its grey skies heavy with the weight of secrets finally laid bare. Hercule Poirot sat in his impeccably tidy flat at Whitehaven Mansions, the air fragrant with the rich aroma of his favourite hot chocolate. The silver tray before him gleamed under the soft glow of a crystal chandelier, its light catching the delicate steam curling from his porcelain cup. His small, precise hands cradled the cup as he gazed out the window, where the city's fog wove a tapestry of mystery over the rooftops. The case of Mr. Chateauneuf's murder and the subsequent death of Mrs. Lorimer had been solved, yet mind, ever restless, danced over the loose threads that remained. Justice had been served, but the human heart, with its labyrinth of motives and desires, demanded a final reckoning. In the quiet of his study, Poirot's thoughts were interrupted by the sharp ring of the telephone. It was Superintendent Battle, his voice steady but tinged with the fatigue of a man who had wrestled with shadows. "Poirot, we've got Roberts locked up tight, his confessions being processed, and the evidence here, bridge scores, of all things, is airtight. But I'd like you to come down to Scotland Yard. There's something about Major Despard and Miss Meredith that's still nagging at me. Loose ends, you know." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile curling beneath it. "Mon ami, loose ends are the threads that weave the tapestry complete. I shall be there within the hour." He replaced the receiver, his grey cells already humming with anticipation. The case was not merely about Dr. Roberts' guilt. It was about understanding the souls who had sat at Chateauneuf's fateful bridge table. Each player had carried a secret, and while the murderer had been unmasked, the others, Major Despard, Anne Meredith, and even the indomitable Ariadne Oliver, their truths to be laid bare, not for judgment, but for clarity. The gathering at Scotland Yard by 10 o'clock. Poirot arrived at Scotland Yard, his black patent leather shoes clicking sharply on the polished floor. The room was a stark contrast to Chateauneuf's opulent home, utilitarian, with walls of faded green and a single window admitting a sliver of dreary light. Superintendent Battle sat at a heavy oak desk, flanked by Colonel Race, whose weathered face bore the quiet intensity of a man accustomed to secrets, and Ariadne Oliver, who was furiously scribbling notes for her next novel, her auburn curls bouncing with each emphatic stroke of her pen. "Poirot," Mrs. Oliver exclaimed, looking up. "I must say, your little stunt with that actor was positively fiendish. I'm stealing it for my next books. Van Heusen will trap a killer with a similar ruse. Mark my words." Poirot inclined his head, his eyes twinkling. "Madame, I am flattered to inspire your fiction, but let us first attend to the facts. Superintendent, you spoke of loose ends." Battle leaned forward, his broad hands clasped. "It's Despard and Meredith. Roberts confessed to both murders, Shatana and Mrs. Lorimer, but I can't shake the feeling we're missing something about the other two. Despard's safari story checked out, but there's a gap in his account of that botanist's death. And Miss Meredith, her connection to that poisoned employer smells like more than coincidence." Colonel Race nodded, his voice low. "Despard's a good man, but he's cagey about that expedition. And Anne Meredith, she's fragile, but there's a steel in her I don't trust." Poirot raised a hand, silencing the room with the gestures. Quiet authority. "Messieurs, Madame, let us proceed methodically. The case is solved, but the human heart does not rest until all shadows are illuminated. We shall summon Major Despard and Mademoiselle Meredith, and we shall speak with Mademoiselle Rhoda Dawes, Anne's friend. Their stories must be heard, not to accuse, but to understand." The summons by noon, the group had reconvened in a private meeting room at Scotland Yard, its walls lined with maps and faded photographs of old cases. Major John Despard arrived first, his tall frame filling the doorway. His sun-bronzed skin and sharp green eyes spoke of a life spent in wild places. But today, his jaw was tight, his posture rigid. Behind him came Anne Meredith, her delicate features pale, her hands twisting a handkerchief. Rhoda Dawes followed, her vibrant energy a stark contrast to Anne's quiet reserve. Rhoda's dark hair was swept into a loose bun, and her eyes sparkled with curiosity, though they darted nervously to Anne. Poirot stood, his small stature commanding the room. "Mies, Amos, thank you for coming. The murderer of Mr. Shatona, Mrs. Lorimer, has been apprehended, but there are questions yet unanswered. Major Despard, let us begin with you. Tell us si vous plot of the botanist who died on your expedition." Despard's eyes narrowed, but he spoke with measured calm. "His name was Professor Luxmore, a brilliant man, obsessed with rare plants. We were deep in the Amazon, tracking a rumored orchid. He wandered off one night against my orders and fell into a ravine, broke his neck. I reported it to the authorities, and they ruled it an accident. That's the truth." Battle leaned forward. "But you omitted the part about the argument you had with Luxmore the day before. Witnesses said you were furious with him." Despard's jaw clenched. "He was reckless, endangering the team. I told him to stay with the group, but he wouldn't listen. Yes, we argued, but I didn't push him into that ravine." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And yet, Major, you feel guilt, Nan, not for murder, but for failing to protect him. This is why you hesitated to speak fully." Despard's shoulders sagged slightly, his voice softening. "I was responsible for the team. His death, it's haunted me. But I swear, it was no crime." Poirot nodded, satisfied. "Mercy, Major, your truth is clear. The accident was not your doing, and Mr. Chatona's taunts were but a cruel jest. You are free of suspicion." Despard exhaled, a weight visibly lifting. Rhoda, standing nearby, gave him a small, encouraging smile, her eyes lingering on his rugged features. Anne's secret Poirot turned to Anne Meredith, whose hands trembled as she met his gaze. "Mademoiselle Meredith, your turn. You were connected to a woman who died of poisoning your employer, Mrs. Benson. Mr. Shatana hinted at your guilt. Speak now, and let us see the truth." Anne's voice was barely above a whisper. I didn't kill her. Mrs. Benson was cruel, always belittling me. She made me mix her medicines, but I swear, I didn't know the dose was wrong. She took too much herself. She was always careless. I was terrified when she died, afraid I'd be blamed, so I left." Rhoda stepped forward, her voice fierce. "Anne's no killer. She's gentle, too gentle. Mrs. Benson was a tyrant, and her death was her own fault." Poirot's eyes softened, but his voice remained firm. "Mademoiselle Meredith, you acted to protect yourself, not out of malice. The fear of accusation drove you to silence, but it was not murder. Mr. Shaitana saw your fear and twisted it into a game. You, too, are free. Anne's eyes filled with tears, and Rhoda clasped her hand, her loyalty unwavering. Poirot noted the bond between them, a flicker of warmth in the cold room, a new beginning as the interrogation wound down. Colonel Race cleared his throat. Poirot, you've cleared the air, but what about the bridge scores? You said they were the key. How did they point to Roberts? Poirot's moustache curled in a satisfied smile. The scores, mon ami, were a mirror of the soul. Dr. Roberts played with reckless abandon, bidding far beyond his card's strength. It was the mark of a man who takes risks, who acts on impulse. His bids told me he could strike in a moment of opportunity, as he did with Shaitana's stiletto, Mrs. Lorimer's precision, Major Dispard's caution, and Mademoiselle Meredith's hesitancy all reflected their natures. Only Roberts' pattern matched the boldness of the crime. Mrs. Oliver clapped her hands, her notebook forgotten. Brilliant. It's like reading a character's mind through their fictional choices. I'm definitely using this. Battle chuckled, a rare sound. You've done it again, Poirot. The case is closed, and the innocent are free. Poirot inclined his head. Not quite. Superintendent, there is one final matter. He turned to Major Dispard, whose gaze had drifted to Rhoda. Major, I observe that you and Mademoiselle Dawes share a certain regard. Perhaps this case, though tragic, has opened a door to something new. Dispard's face flushed, but he met Poirot's eyes squarely. You're a perceptive man, Poirot. Rhoda and we've talked. She's got a fire in her, and I'd like to see where it leads. Rhoda laughed, her cheeks pink. He's not wrong, Mr. Poirot. John's a bit rough around the edges, but I like that. We're planning a trip somewhere far from bridge tables and murder. Anne smiled softly, her first genuine smile of the day. I'm happy for you, Rhoda, and I think I'll go back to Devon, start fresh, no more secrets. The final reflection as the group dispersed, Poirot lingered, his thoughts turning inward. The case had been a dance of intellect and intuition, a puzzle of human nature as much as evidence. Dr. Roberts had played his hand boldly, but Poirot's little grey cells had outmaneuvered him. Shaitana's game, cruel and provocative, had ended in justice, but it had also revealed the fragility and strength of those caught in its web. That evening, Poirot walked through London's fog, his black overcoat blending into the mist. The city hummed around him, alive with secrets yet to be uncovered. He hummed a soft tune, a French melody from his youth, its notes carrying a quiet triumph. The deck was cleared, the players' truths laid bare, and Hercule Poirot, ever the master of the game, was ready for the next mystery to unfold. Chapter 11. The Phantom Card. The fog had thickened over London, cloaking the city in a shroud of mystery, as Hercule Poirot stepped out from the warmth of his favorite café, the taste of rich hot chocolate lingering on his palate. The resolution of Mr. Shaitana's deadly bridge game had left him triumphant yet restless. The case, with its intricate web of motives and psychological gambits, had been a masterpiece of deduction, but a faint unease tugged at his whisper that not all cards had been played. As he adjusted his scarf against the chill, a figure emerged from the mist. It was Rhoda Dawes, Anne Meredith's spirited friend, her auburn curls damp from the fog, her eyes alight with urgency. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice trembling with something more than the cold, I need your help. And she's vanished. Poirot's mustache twitched as his grey cells stirred. Vanished. Mademoiselle, tell me everything, and do not omit a single detail, Rhoda explained breathlessly. After Dr. Roberts' arrest, Anne had seemed shaken but relieved, confiding in Rhoda about her fears of being implicated in Shaitana's murder. Major Dispard, ever the gallant, had offered to escort her home, and the trio had parted ways at Anne's modest flat. But this morning, Rhoda had found the flat empty, no note, no sign of struggle, only a single playing card on the table. The Jack of Spades, its edges curling as if scorched. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The Jack of Spades, he murmured. A knave, a jogi, a card that speaks of betrayal. Come, mademoiselle, we must act swiftly. They hailed a cab to Anne's flat, the city's fog-swirled streets lending an eerie backdrop. Inside, meticulous gaze swept the room. The furniture was undisturbed, the bed neatly made, but the air held a faint metallic temps. He knelt by the table, examining the Jack of Spades. This card, he said, is not from an ordinary deck. See the texture, the slight sheen, It is bespoke, likely from a private collection, perhaps Shaitona's own. Rhoda gasped. But Shaitona's dead. And Dr. Roberts confessed. He confessed to 2 murders, Poirot said, his voice low. But what if there is another player in this game, one who has remained in the shadows? Poirot's mind raced. The case had seemed closed, yet Anne's disappearance suggested a hidden thread. He recalled Shaitona's cryptic boasts about his collection of murderers. Had there been a 5th, uninvited guest that night? Someone who watched from the wings, manipulating the deadly game. He summoned Superintendent Battle and Colonel Race, who arrived at the flat with skeptical expressions. Poirot, Battle said, rubbing his jaw. Roberts is in custody. The bridge score sealed his fate. You're saying there's more to this. I am saying, mon ami, that a puzzle is not complete until every piece fits. Poirot held up the Jack of Spades. This card is a challenge, a taunt. Someone wishes to play with Hercule Poirot. The detectives agreed to investigate, though Race's eyes gleamed with doubt. If there's another killer, he said, they're bold to strike under our noses. Boldness, Poirot replied, is the hallmark of desperation. Their first stop was Shaitona's mansion, now sealed and somber. The butler, a gaunt man named Grayson, admitted them, his face pale. No one's been here since the police left, sir, he said, but Poirot noted a tremor in his voice. In Shaitona's study, Poirot examined the collector's card decks, housed in glass cases like trophies. One case was ajar, its lock scratched. Inside, a deck was missing a single card, the Jack of Spades. Grayson, Poirot said sharply, who has had access to this room? The butler stammered, only myself and Miss Clara, the housemaid. She's been tidying up. Poirot's gaze pinned Grayson. And where is this Miss Clara now? Grayson hesitated, then admitted she'd left abruptly the previous day, claiming a family emergency. Poirot exchanged a glance with Battle. Find her, he said. She may hold the key. While Battle dispatched officers to track Clara, Poirot turned to Rhoda. Tell me, mademoiselle, about Anne's state of mind. Did she speak of anyone else, someone who might have frightened her? Rhoda frowned, recalling a moment. She mentioned a man, someone she saw near Shaitona's house the night of the murder. She said he looked familiar, but she couldn't place him. She was terrified. Poirot's mustache quivered. A man, perhaps our phantom player. The trail led to a seedy pub in Whitechapel, where Clara, the housemaid, was rumored to frequent. The air inside was thick with smoke and suspicion. Poirot, disguised in a plain coat to blend in, approached the barman, who pointed out a nervous young woman in the corner. Clara's eyes widened as Poirot sat opposite her. Mademoiselle Clara, he said softly, you have taken something from Mr. Shaitona's collection, a card, perhaps, and you know where Mademoiselle Meredith is. Clara's hands shook. I didn't mean no harm, she whispered. He made me do it, said he'd ruin me if I didn't help. Who? Poirot pressed, his voice like steel. Mr. Lyle, she said, tears welling. Shaitona's cousin. He was at the house that night, hiding in the servants' passage. He saw everything, said Shaitona. Deserved it for meddling in his affairs. Poirot's mind clicked like a lock. Lyle Shaitona, the disinherited cousin, had been mentioned in passing during the investigation, a gambler with debts and a grudge. Shaitona had cut him off, humiliated him. Could Lyle have orchestrated a deeper game, using Roberts as a pawn? Clara revealed Lyle's hideout, a derelict warehouse by the Thames. Poirot, Battle, Race, and a squad of officers descended on the location under cover of fog. Inside, they found Anne, bound but unharmed, her eyes wide with fear. Lyle, man with Shaitona's sharp features, stood over her, clutching a revolver. You're too late, Poirot, Lyle sneered. Shaitona thought he could expose me, ruin me with his little games. I made sure Roberts took the fall, but Anne saw me that night. She had to go. Poirot stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. Monsieur Lyle, you have played a clever hand, but you forget one thing. Hercule Poirot does not lose at cards. As Lyle raised his gun, Battle's men surged forward, disarming him. Anne sobbed as Rhoda rushed to her side, and Poirot examined a ledger Lyle had dropped. It detailed a scheme to frame Roberts, using Shaitona's own collection to plant the Jack of Spades, a symbol of Lyle's triumph. Back at Scotland Yard, Lyle confessed, enraged by Shaitona's taunts about his failed schemes. He'd lurked in the mansion, watching the bridge game. When Roberts stabbed Shaitona, Lyle saw his chance to manipulate the aftermath, planting clues to ensure Roberts' guilt while silencing Anne, who'd glimpsed him. Mrs. Lorimer's death, he admitted, was Robert's doing, but Lyle had encouraged it through forged letters, ensuring the trail stayed cold. As Lyle was led away, Anne thanked Poirot, her voice soft. "I thought I was done for," she said. "How did you know?" Poirot smiled. "The Jack of Spades, mademoiselle. It was too perfect, too deliberate. A true criminal does not leave such a flourish unless he wishes to be seen." The fog had lifted as Poirot walked home, the city's lights piercing the night. He thought of Shaitona, the collector of human flaws, and of Lyle, whose greed had turned him into a phantom card in a deadly deck. "The game," Poirot murmured, "is never truly over." He paused by the Thames, the water reflecting the stars. Somewhere, another mystery waited, and Hercule Poirot would be ready to play.